The AC area.
Good evening, ladies
A
and
lot of people
gentlemen.
up with this. They did a nice bar local too.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
We went there too.
This is the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Stonington, April 15th, 2025. I'm Chuck Sheehan, I'm the chairman. The first order of business tonight after we approve, good evening, Lynn. After we approve minutes and appoint members of the committee that will act this evening will be to interview potential citizen members for the POCD Plan of Comprehensive Development, which is a study that we're going to undertake shortly. Interview citizen members for a steering subcommittee. So if you're here for any of the items that are on the public hearing agenda, there'll be a slight delay. So I'm telling you that if you don't want to stay for the interviews, feel free to leave and come back, or feel free to stay. Everyone's welcome to view the process, but we envision it will take us approximately 45 minutes, you think?
30, 45?
30, 45 minutes for that one item. And that will be in advance of the items for public hearing this evening. So give you just a few minutes to make up your mind, and if you want to leave and come back, that's fine. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to do so. So let the record reflect that the meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. I think we have everyone here this evening, all the regular members. We'll talk about who is seated for each item. We had some absences, and we'll talk about who sits for each public hearing item when we get to that item. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Minutes number 1788 for April 1st, 2025. What's the commission's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from meeting number 1788 from April 1st, 2025 as submitted.
Motion to approve is submitted. Thank you, Ryan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair abstains. Motion is approved. Next item, public comment. This is an opportunity where anyone in the audience that wishes to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda. So if, for instance, you had a comment on a public hearing item, you got to wait for the public hearing. But if you have a comment on some other general matter that involves the Planning and Zoning Commission that you wish to make, you're more than welcome to take the mic and let us hear from you at this point. Anyone wish to make a comment under public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Clifton?
None.
No correspondence. Reports from staff?
None.
Then we'll move to the item of interviewing for POCD subcommittee. So at the meeting of March 4th, the committee voted to establish a steering committee to guide the development of the Plan of Comprehensive Development. We'll refer to that as the POCD. And in that motion, the commission decided to include membership for 2 citizens at large. This evening, we invited and publicly advertised for anyone who was interested to submit an application. We've received 5 applications, and this next item on the agenda will be to interview the 5 candidates. What we plan to do is to ask each of them the same questions, follow up with any questions that the commission has of each applicant, and then the commission will receive nominations from the commission as to who they want to nominate. And there's 5 applicants, so not everybody's going to get a position, but 2 people will be elected to fill the 2 slots. So it is competitive. So we have 5 candidates, and 1 candidate could not make it in. We're going to interview virtually Timothy Murney. And Tim, are you online and ready to go? Can you hear me?
He's there. He is there.
Tim, can you hear us now?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, Tim. Tim, the procedure for tonight's meeting is Commission's going to interview each of the 5 applicants, and follow on to that, we'll receive nominations from the Commission, and they'll vote on who they want to fill the 2 slots that are available. So we're going to proceed with each candidate, and Ryan, who's my co-chair, will ask you the interview questions, and commission will follow up with any other questions they have. Ryan?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Murney, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, first question I have is, why are you interested in serving on the POCD steering committee?
Well, Stonington is home, and I've lived here 43 years. My kids attended schools in Stonington, and I want to make further contributions to its well-being.
Okay, thank you. Next question I have is, what is your opinion of the responsibilities and primary function of the POCD steering committee?
I think it's a vital part of keeping up with the times. I think the town needs to grow in some ways, but also maintain its character.
Okay. Next question is, we would like to know what pertinent experience you have serving on a board, commission, or in any other volunteer capacity. And when you're responding, if you could please include any professional or volunteer experience or a unique skill set that you think you would be bringing to the committee.
Well, it's probably been about 20 years. I served on the first Affordable Housing Committee with Elisa, next to you. Hi, Elisa. And I've held jobs with the Builders Association and worked with the Eastern Connecticut Workforce Investment Board for a number of years. As for skills, I humbly offer my attention to detail. I'm organized, I'm resourceful, I have strong written and verbal communication skills, and I really enjoy problem solving.
Thank you. And then the final question I have is, if you are appointed to the POCD steering committee, what would you consider to be a successful outcome to your tenure with the committee?
Well, I think a plan that actually gets implemented and results in noticeable improvements to the quality of life in Stonington would be, I think, the best outcome and truly a success.
Any other questions for Tim from the board?
I have one. You work on the Affordable Housing Committee. Can you give us an example of a success that you had there and a failure, what you had there as well?
I think that the plan that was developed identified a real need for affordable housing in town. I think identifying the problem, which is that people of lower income or middle income are finding it still today difficult to live in town because of the rising cost of housing. And we discussed and identified the fact that there were, that it's becoming a problem as far as attracting people who would work in town, from firefighters and nurses and teachers, because it's just too expensive to live here. I'd say a success is that I think the first step in identifying a problem and doing something about it is, articulating it and identifying the problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Tim? Tim, thank you very much for your expression of interest in this job. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Next candidate is David Rathman. Dave, if you come forward. You're well known to all of us, but if you just state your name and address, appreciate
David
it.
Upton, 211 Cove Road.
Dave is well known to us because he was the chairman of this commission and an esteemed one at that. Dave will proceed in the same manner with the same 5 questions.
Good evening, David. Why are you interested in serving in on the POCD steering committee?
I think I have a lot of input. I've known the town for basically my whole life. I've been on commissions since 1974, chairman, including the inland wetlands. One time I was chairman of that. I was on the zoning board of appeals, as chairman of that. I was on this commission, I was chairman of that. I've involved in the Wesley Public Library. I was president of that in 1992 when we put the addition on. I was chairman of the building committee of the Woolworth Library. I'm in fact involved in Stonington Historical Society. I'm on, for 19 years, member of the Wesley Land Trust Board. I'm can have a farm in Cove Road, 55 acres. I really would like to see how Stonington can continue as a town it is today. The current POCD, I was not happy with the document that came out. It was too hard to work with. I think we need a document that's user-friendly. Every time we would go to the POCD, we'd have to flip page after page after page. Is it go to this, is it go to this? And I think that we've got to come out that the normal person can read and can understand. I'm not anti-growth, I'm for controlled growth. I'm very much of an environmentalist. I like open space. What else can I say? I think, next question.
Thank you. What is your opinion of the responsibilities and primary function of the POCD steering committee?
I think we can guide the company that we've hired. I understand they've hired someone to work with us, to have the local input into it, and the people, and the knowledge of the town. I think you have someone from out of town come in, they really don't know the town, and so you really have to have. The committee has to put the input as what we want and what's our vision of the future of the town.
We'd also like to know what your pertinent experience you have serving on our board of commission. I think you actually already covered that
I think
quite
I've
extensively. So if there's any other unique skill set or perspective that you would bring to the committee, what would that be? What would you call it out?
I think I work well with committees. I don't think, I like the things move along. I think we can do it, and I think we can. I would like to be on it because maybe it's my last hurrah. I don't know. I keep getting on different committees. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you.
And the final question, if you're appointed to the POCD steering committee, what would you consider to be a successful outcome of your tenure with the committee?
My success?
What would you be a successful outcome if you're on the committee?
I don't understand.
I think what just kind of asking is, at the end of this, if you're on the committee, what would you see, what would you, in your mind, what would be a success at the end of this?
As I say, is a document that we can all understand.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to read and for the next 10 years, we know what we're gonna do.
Okay.
I think the one now is not really, it did not work, I don't think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you for your expression of interest and for all your service
Thank
to
you.
this community.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Next person to be interviewed is Jane Dawson. Evening, Jane.
I'm Jane.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Nice to
I'm
meet you.
Jane Dawson. I'm from Rivercrest Drive in Pawcatuck.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First question, why are you interested in serving on the POCD steering committee?
Well, I see this committee as the most important part in guiding the other committees in town. And so I see this as absolutely critical. I love Stonington. I've lived in Stonington for 24 years, and I love the history and the character. I love the coastal part of it. But I also think that it could do with some upgrades and some improvements, particularly in the area of sustainability. So I wonder about things about the lack of solar panels in towns, lack of EVs. We need a budget manager for climate change and sustainability. Bicycles. I love to ride my bike and it's unsafe. I live down on Pawcatuck Point. River Road is unsafe. There are no sidewalks there. So I'm concerned with transportation and easy transportation for people.
Next question, what is your opinion of the responsibilities, pardon me, and primary function of the POCD steering committee?
I see it as to guide all the other committees so that we really set the blueprint for where this town is going, the balance of conservation and development, and where the future is for this town.
We'd also like to know then what your pertinent experience you have serving on a board, commission, or in another volunteer capacity. And in responding, if you could please include any professional or volunteer experience you have or what unique skill set you think you would be bringing to the
Okay,
committee.
I'm on the Climate Change Task Force, which you probably guessed from my orientation here. I also was elected as the representative to the POCD last year from the Climate Change Task Force. I went to 5 meetings, I read the POCD, so I feel like I have a strong sense of what it's all about. I'm a retired college professor of politics and environmental studies. I was director of the Environmental Studies Center at Connecticut College for 12 years. I was on the Strategic Planning Committee multiple times. I chaired the Sustainability Strategic Planning Committee for the college, and so I'm pretty good at planning and analyzing and writing, in terms of boards, I'm on the board of the Nature Center for the town, the Mystic Nature Center, Denison and Pequot Seacoast Nature Center. And I also volunteer with the Newport Aquarium in environmental education. So I have... Well, I have a lot of knowledge of the environment and conservation. I have a lot of passion for it, and I think I could bring this passion to the committee. And I think it's very important conserving open spaces, conserving spaces permanently rather than temporarily, and so on. So I think I could do a lot for the committee.
And final question, if you are appointed to the POCD steering committee, what would you consider to be a successful outcome of your tenure with the committee?
Very much like my predecessor, something that's very realistic and usable. I was on the POCD implementation committee as a representative, and what I saw is we went through each thing that we had set out to accomplish in the old one, and it was like, we didn't accomplish this, we didn't accomplish this, we didn't accomplish this. It was very dismaying, and I would like to see a report and a plan that we can actually accomplish.
Anyone have any other questions for Jane?
I have one question.
Yeah.
You had said, for your orientation, you're green, we sent out surveys, what if they come back and they want really more towards growth at the expense of the environment a little bit? How, and that's what the town wants. And I don't know the answers, but how would you?
I think there needs to be a balance of growth, because I agree in terms of things like affordable housing. We really don't have enough affordable housing for any class, up through the upper class. So I see it as we need a balance of these.
Fair enough, thank you.
That was the question I was gonna ask, is with strong environmental credentials which you bring to the table, how do you balance sensible economic growth? But you just
We have
answered
to
that.
balance it. I mean, we've got to pay for the schools. We need our restaurants, we need our taxes, we need all of those things. So you've got to balance it. But I don't think it's impossible to balance. I think it is very possible to balance.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions of Jane? Jane, thank you very much for coming this evening, meeting with us, and for your expression of interest in this position. Jennifer Lacker. Evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Lacker. I have some of my experience to pass on. Like the other applicants, I've been around for 25 years and have lots of different experience with committees and volunteer work. I was on planning and zoning as secretary in the borough for 6 years during the building of Monsanto, Stonington Commons. And then 6 years in the town with all the land use committees, so I observed a lot. My particular interest is in transportation issues, and I've been working on that. I'm the founder of Bike Stonington.
We'll ask you the questions
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
Why are you interested in serving on the POCD steering committee?
This is the one place where government really works, by listening to the community and the input of community, and it's a way of really participating. And this document is so vital to guiding us in the next 10 years. Besides being a requirement, it's also a great opportunity to really hear and listen to what people want, what their concerns are, how to shape that going forward.
What is your opinion of the responsibilities and primary function of the POCD steering committee?
Really take all the information that we're going to get from the community, really hear and make it very specific in actionable items that will be much more workable than the last one was. I too have been part of Clifton's meetings these years where we reviewed it. I was on the POCD implementation for Safe Streets. And so if we get a more workable document that really picks up, that has energy and picks up the effervescence of our community and the people and the character and all that we're going for.
I know you kind of covered it with the handout, but we would like to know what pertinent experience you have serving on a board or commission or in another volunteer capacity, and if you have any unique skill set that you think you would be bringing to the committee.
Well, my work with transportation, I've done Stonington Cemetery, Historical Society, things like that, but it was really with Mystic Community Bikes, being on that board, that we started asking, like, how do we get bike safety? How does that work? How do the other towns do it? So I really have learned a lot in the past 10 years about how communities, it's the communities that ask for things that get them, and how that process goes. And so I attend a lot of CDOT meetings on bike ped issues every month, and have worked on getting bike lanes for the vascular bridge, which is coming next year, and then designing and getting the application for the Route 1 bike lanes that we hope to get someday soon.
And if you were appointed to the POCD steering committee, what would you consider to be a successful outcome to your tenure with the committee?
To have a workable document that's really reflective of the town and what it desires, that really captures the character of the people now, not just older people, younger, and hopefully we can use it to get more engagement with our community. in committees and all the issues we have, hopefully.
Anyone have any other questions of Jennifer?
I do. So, you as well as some of the other candidates have talked about having a more user-friendly or workable document, but how about the contents of the document? In the current POCD, is there an area where you feel there needs to be focus on changing it in any way, shape, or form? Or are you satisfied with the POCD as it is?
No, I think this year, working with Clifton, where we went through each section, was incredibly helpful in seeing what works, what doesn't pertain anymore, that kind of thing. My own personal bent is transportation has always been the most important thing in American growth and keeps changing and has to be updated. All the work on bridges that we're doing, that kind of thing. So I think that's critical. But also a real vision and imagination, which I think often is lacking in a lot of these plans and documents.
Thank you.
Or they're too pie in the sky, too many pretty pictures that aren't really realistic and haven't come to pass either. And there's a whole shelf of those plans in Clifton's office.
Thank you, Jennifer. I agree. Transportation volume to capacity ratio of the major arterial streets, intersections with high accident rates are issues that should be focused on, in some capacity in a study like this, particularly volume to capacity ratio of the arterial streets.
So I spend a lot of time hearing about other towns and where the successes are, such as New Britain is the biggest success story in the state of getting grants, of changing things and working on things. But seeing that really helps, yeah.
Yeah, really, a lot of the impetus for, inputs to the Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP as it's called, come out of POCDs, and, a lot of towns like New Britain, Glastonbury, West Hartford, receive an abundance of urban systems grants for transportation projects, and the impetus for them was the POCD. Any other questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, thank you very much for your expression of interest, Jennifer. Next candidate, I don't want to mispronounce this last name, Lindsay Fairchild.
I also just answered to, I don't want to mispronounce the last name, but you got it exactly right.
Oh, good, thank you. So, we'll proceed in the same manner unless you desire an opening statement.
No, Lindsay Fairchild from 37 Greenmanville in this thing.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Why are you interested in serving on the POCD steering committee?
I actually really love POCDs. The first time that I know I'm a nerd. The first time I read ours, I got really excited. I know it's a little unwieldy. I feel like there's ways we could improve it, but there's some really cool stuff in there. And I think it's not just for guidance, but it can actually serve as a springboard and a tool for a lot of our boards and commissions in our town going into the future, if we do it right.
What is your opinion of the responsibilities and primary function of the POCD steering committee?
As the steering committee, I think primarily the important thing is to ask who's at the table and who's not at the table, to make sure that we're hearing voices from everyone in town and going out and finding those that maybe don't always show up to meetings or don't have as much access to this type of information as some of us are able to do, and figure out how we can make sure that every single voice is heard and incorporated, and then also balance that with what will create a plan for the future that will create a sustainable future for Stonington where we can be successful as a town.
We'd like to know what pertinent experience you have serving on a board, commission, or in any other volunteer capacity. And then you're responding, please include any professional or volunteer experience or a unique skill set you think you would be bringing to the committee.
So professionally, I work in policy analysis, environmental policy analysis. I really look at how policies affect businesses and have done that for the better part of the last decade. My background is in environmental management and geology. I'm actually just this week finishing a certificate in geospatial information systems So I bring those to the table, but I also have been on the POCD Implementation Committee. I'm on the Waterfront Commission and also the Climate Change Task Force, as well as the Mystic River Historical Society Board of Directors. Oh, and SNEFLA, can't forget the fishermen. I'm also on the SNEFLA board.
Don't forget.
I mean, a member of SNEFLA, excuse me, yeah.
And if you are appointed to the POCD steering committee, what would you consider to be a successful outcome of your tenure with the committee?
I think it's that we come with a document that is inclusive, as I mentioned, that holds everyone's voice in it and recognizes where we are today, but that's also accessible for all of our boards, commissions, and the public to use as a tool to go forward, find the grants, find the ways that we can move the town forward in the best, most sustainable ways possible. And also, one that sets us up in the future that we can look back on and say, yes, we were successful in all of these things, or most of these things. And then finally, something that is flexible enough to deal with the fact that we don't know today what it's going to look like in 10 years. So we want a document that includes some flexibility and shows us guidance, as the North Star, as we're dealing with new and unexpected things.
Any other questions for Lindsay from the board?
Your last paragraph about, I guess, if Susan or Jane are here, can you just explain that?
Yeah, I've had the wonderful pleasure of being on the Climate Change Task Force with Jane and Susan. They have been absolutely stellar. I trust them both entirely, and would be very happy to work with them again, but also to have them represent the voices of Stonington.
Thank you.
So let me just clarify, so if they're not on it, you don't want to be on it? Is that what you're, is this?
No,
Oh, I mean, that's sort of how this read.
I wanted that to be a strong recommendation. I would not want to put myself before them. I think they have been leaders both in our community and on the Climate Change Task Force, and just didn't want to put myself ahead of them.
And so you're just finishing up at URI, so you must know YQ?
I don't.
You don't know YQ Wang? He's not still there? The
Well,
remote sensing guy?
I'm in the remote program.
Yeah, 'cause he was there for years. I got my GIS.
Oh, you did? No, we'll have to chat, but I haven't had the pleasure.
I got my doctorate in environmental science.
Oh, wonderful.
So you see YQ.
Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to look for him.
Any other questions of Lindsay?
I thought I was just curious about that last paragraph.
So you said you were on the previous POCD implementation committee. What do you think was done well and what was not done well in the implementation of the current POCD?
Well, I wasn't around when the POCD was written, so I hate to go back and tell anyone what they did wrong, because those were different times and they made the best decisions they could at that time. But I think, as Jane mentioned, there were a number of things that were put in there as goals and were not achieved. And so I would like to find a more of a balance. I don't want to just get the low-hanging fruit. I think we can be more aspirational than that. But I would like to set reasonable goals that we think are really attainable for the future.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Lindsay? Hearing none, Lindsay, thank you very much for your expression of interest, and thank you for your work on the other boards and commissions as well. Okay, that brings us to the next phase here, where the board can raise nominations.
So Chuck, to just, before we get into all that,
Yes.
I put the procedure that the Board of Selectmen follow in my memo. Typically what the Board of Selectmen does is wait a meeting and, internalize, think about all of the applicants. I have zero problem doing that, and I would likely recommend doing that. The only thing I will say for this commission to be aware of is, in doing so, we'll have to be aware that we're going to already start delaying our POCD process from the schedule that was approved, just because it took us so long to get to this point. So I'll put that out there. I think it would be best to take a meeting, to take to the next meeting.
Yeah,
to
we
think
thought so
about
too,
it.
and I know earlier you didn't think that, but,
Well,
so you
I
weighed
think-
that
I think
obviously.
both ways. I think, you know, I'll
I'm fine.
start by saying.
I prefer to wait.
Yeah, I
I'll
agree.
start by saying that, you know, I just wanted everybody to be aware that we're already going to start missing some of our deadline dates per the contract. And so we're already gonna be delaying the process because it took us a month and a half to get here. But, you know, procedurally, what the Board of Selectmen does is they will listen to the applicants, they'll wait to the next meeting, and then at that point, they'll do a deliberation discussion and then go into nomination.
Makes
So
more
I'll leave that
sense.
up, I'll leave that up to
Definitely
you.
makes
It's
more
only 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's
the
not
next
like we're
meeting
wait-
is May sixth, so
Okay.
that would be the next date.
Yes.
So-
We are,
You know, it's not like
just
we're
so
waiting
everyone in
another
the
whole month.
audience knows, we're not gonna, the town isn't gonna finish the POCD, on time, as far as this has to be submitted to OPM in accordance with a certain schedule, and we're not gonna make it on time. We are gonna be given a waiver, so we do have to be judicious in the way we approach this, the way we manage delays, and the way we manage the prosecution of the plan. But, so thank you all and thank you to the one candidate, Tim, who participated in a virtual way this evening, and we'll have a decision for you at our next meeting. Okay. That brings us to the next item on the agenda. You had your packet, I'll just wait till the room to clear for a moment. In your packet was zoning enforcement violations, and unless anyone else has any questions on that, we'll move to the next item, administrative review. There are no items under administrative review.
None,
No items under old business.
none.
That moves us to the first public hearing. And this was continued from, did we actually open this public hearing?
No, that's a mistype.
So do we have to read the legal ad?
Yeah, just
Just to note.
read the description and
Then
open
if
the.
you don't mind, reading just the way it's cited on the agenda is fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our first public hearing is PZ 2508MA, D. Warla, zone mapping amendment to rezone parcel to RM20. Property is located at 12 Skipper Street, Stonington, NBL 129-21-1. Property located in the RM-20 and RC-120 zones. This public hearing is continued from April 1st, 2025.
Thank you, Lynn. Motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to open this public hearing.
Motion to open, is there a second?
Second motion.
Thank you, Gary. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is open. I see Keith Nelson is here. The esteemed Keith Nelson. Evening, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Keith Nielsen with DACO from Mystic. I've prepared the application documents before you tonight, and before I get started on my presentation, we have the notices of,
Oh, thank you, Keith. I guess over there. Pass those down, Clifton. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, you don't want to give them to me.
we had a survey prepared of the area at the end of Lord's Point. It consists of 5 houses along Skipper Street, of which the easternmost is Dan and Karen Warilla's. I've colored this in so that you'd be able to zero in on the real topics of the discussion tonight. This parcel the zoning was modified in 1980s, around 1986, to include RC 120 zone, which you can see as the hatched area, the darker part of the site. The green being the lawn, the house is here, Skipper Street is out here, north is up. And the problem that this created was that the RC 120 zone was designated and implemented, adopted into the regulations to preserve natural resource fringes along coastal waters and riverine waters. And the designation here for this particular point of Lord's Point is a bit of a mystery, because the entire site for Warillas, actually everything along Skipper Street and over to Alley Way, is all developed shorefront. And to give you an idea of how inappropriate this is, I just wanted to show you a sequence of aerial photographs, which, as a matter of fact, I made copies of to hand out to you. And these are for your use and records. I'll give you every other one, because I only made 6 copies.
I'll show it. Thanks.
And the point that these photographs are depicting is what this site looks like now as compared to what it looked like after a couple of storms historically. And I've got them on the large poster as well, so they're fairly dramatic. First of all, this first photograph is from 1993, and it shows Lord's Point the way it's currently developed. There haven't been a lot of changes to the numbers or locations of houses and such in this last 30 years. But when you look back a little bit further into the mid-70s, you can see this being the site. It's a pretty harsh site, and it's wide open to storms from the southeast to southwest quadrant, and some of those storms are pretty significant. The hurricane of '38 had strong winds from the south, so did Hurricane Irene. Hurricane Bob was from the southeast. Hurricane Gloria in the mid-'80s came in from the southwest, and that was an odd one. And then Hurricane Irene was south, Hurricane Sandy was from the southeast. This is the shoreline of this property. And you can see the whole shoreline of the Skipper Street complex is pretty well wiped clean of any natural resources except the rocky shorefront, exposed ledge, and the coastal waters. There's a seawall that has existed in front of these sites for decades now, 40, 50, 60 years. Before that time, we've got some pictures back into the 50s, sometime around just before the hurricane of '54, and you can see what this site looks like. This is the site. There's no natural resources there. The exposed ledge and gravel and boulders and stuff goes almost right up to Skipper Street, and it's hard to see how this area was ever classified as a coastal resource to be preserved. The same thing in the hurricane of '38. This photograph was 8 years later, and it still looks like a bomb went off down there. And there's no good way to protect this shorefront without some type of man-made intervention. The seawall has made the difference, that it's made a lot of these properties developable and maintainable. The problem is that the RC 120 zone precludes the ability to do that kind of maintenance work. It is not appropriately zoned. This was a misapplication of good zoning intention. And so what we're trying to do with this project is to have the zoning changed back to RM20, which is consistent with the rest of Lord's Point, not right along the shoreline. And that would allow the Warillas to maintain their property and to do landscaping that would be suitable and appropriate to the site, that would also benefit the environmental resources. So I summarized in my three-page narrative that this is a fully developed shoreline. There is no resource to protect here outside of the rocky shorefront and developed shorefront, which the site qualifies for. In the zoning regulations, section 16.3, there are several categories, criteria that have to be addressed, including municipal fiscal impact, public safety and traffic, public works, cultural and aesthetic and historic considerations, and natural resources. And I've addressed them all in the application. The historical background I've gone through, and the whole purpose of this project is just to allow the Warrillas to do some landscaping on their property, which will include a sitting wall around the perimeter of their sidewalk area, and then gardens and such behind it. In the application package, I submitted some typical photographs of what the site looks like after a coastal storm, where the lawn is destroyed back 10 to 20 feet behind the sidewalk. And they have to repair that every year at a cost of thousands of dollars, and so do other people on the point. But we're just going for application change at this site at this point. The RC 120 zone precludes their ability to repair and properly protect their property, and that's the relief that we're trying to seek by changing the zone. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions of Keith? Keith, I have just one question. Does DEEP have a policy on seawalls?
Yeah, the DEP generally does not like seawalls.
Right, that's what I understood it to mean exactly the same thing.
Right, they want to have some kind of natural feature developed on a site that will attenuate breaking waves and be at some kind of a balance that would allow the resources, the environmental resources and habitat to restore itself naturally after a storm. But the reason I brought these photographs here is it shows you from 1946 into the 70s, that never happened. It was
Right.
always storm devastation, never restoration. And so until the seawalls were put in and the lawns and landscaping was contained and protected from the ocean, that Lord's Point began to look the way it does. And you know, their location is somewhat disadvantageous because southeast storms still come in through Weekapiset Passage and exert a lot of energy into this area, and the Warrillas are right in the line of that type of wave action.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions of Keith?
So, could you just explain via the map where you want to change the landscaping? I'm just not seeing it
Sure.
yet.
In this map, in this drawing, this brown area is all exposed ledge. That's the area you
Beyond the
see
seawall.
with the rocks and the boulders, right? The seawall is this dark brown area, and right behind it, that uniformly 5-foot wide strip is a sidewalk. Okay, it's a walkway. It's not so much intended as a sidewalk as it is a wave splash zone that will not be destroyed by breaking waves that come over the seawall. All right? And so the landscaping wall that I've referred to is going to go on the back side of that concrete walkway area, and then the landscaping can be but behind that.
What are the elevations of the two walls? The landscaping wall and
The seawall varies from, probably the highest point is about 4 to 5 feet, and the landscape wall behind it will be about 2 feet.
okay.
It's a low profile wall.
And that's sufficient height? I'm sorry, Lynn, for intruding.
Well, it's consistent with current FEMA zoning regs. FEMA does not want to change the grade of coastal areas. They acknowledge, I should say, that changing the grade of up to 2 feet is considered inconsequential to flooding effects and the flood patterns that are naturally generated. And so we've chosen that as the height, and that's why we call it a sitting wall. It's not really going to look like a seawall, it'll be more of a landscape.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I noticed it's a very green lawn.
We're trying to protect that.
Thank
It's
you.
an excellent plan, Keith, and a very good explanation.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Do you see the landscaping affecting the neighbor at all?
No, the historical, Hurricane Gloria was coming this way. Hurricane Irene and Bob were coming this way. Hurricane Bob and Sandy were coming this way. Nothing on this project is going to adversely affect anybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Clifton?
No, I fully agree with Keith's comment in his narrative that this is a misapplication of well-intended zoning. This section of Lord's Point, all of these properties on Skipper Street and up to Alleyway should not be zoned RC 120 because it does not fit the mold of what that zone's purpose is.
Okay. Any questions of Clifton?
I guess my question to Clifton, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, why wouldn't we just take it away from all those lots? While we're doing it just for,
So I discussed that with Keith. If the commission wanted to go through the process of rezoning the other lots as well, that would be separate because we'd have to
can't extend.
we'd have to properly notice
yeah,
them.
we can't extend that thing.
So this one is the only one under consideration, but if this was approved, the commission could either go through the process or direct the process itself, or those individual property owners could get together and come back with a similar rezone.
Is it too late to do this in the zoning rewrite?
The rest of the properties?
Yeah.
No,
It's not too late.
not too late.
So we could just bring that up next week and have,
Correct.
what's his name,
Yep.
Francisco, just,
Correct, yeah, pending, if you chose
Pending,
to,
yeah, I'm
if
just
you
saying.
chose to approve this one tonight, we could bring
because
it
it
up
seems
at the next meeting.
incompatible, but not the same as the rest of the lots. It seems like, you're stopping it here, you might as well just get rid of, the other ones just to be consistent with that stretch of land.
Yeah, we did discuss that at the
I would point out also
submission, yeah.
that the same criteria apply to this lot on Alleyway. Okay, they have the same sort of situation. Theirs is even slightly compounded because waves that come into that property is owned by Robert Crepsio, and waves that come into that site are trapped. They can't go anywhere but up and over the wall. And he is in a very disadvantageous situation there.
I know we're not gonna hold up your application, but it seems silly just to do this lot when, like, all the other ones, then you have these weird RC 120 zones, like, and then it stops here, and then it starts up again, and it just seems discontinuous, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Discontinuous?
Discombobulated.
Discontinuous, because it's here, stops, and then it starts up
Yeah.
again.
But I think it makes sense
So
if we decide to move forward
Yeah.
with this,
Yeah,
then bring it up
yeah,
at the next rewrite
exactly.
meeting to say, okay,
Yes.
let's address this comprehensively. Yeah.
And it's not a neck, it's only this,
Yeah.
it's not
Good
town-wide.
point.
Yes.
I agree.
The other landowners would apply.
Clifton, can I just ask you one question, because I don't know off the top of my head, and my Wi-Fi is not working. RC 120 zones, what is the current required lot size? We don't have a table like we do for the
120,000 square feet.
120,000 square feet.
Correct. In application of these bifurcated lots, we basically just look at where the predominant structure is in terms of its zoning, so it's RM20, which is what their request is. The issue with the RC 120 is that it's basically more or less a non-infringement area as a zone. And so, as Keith mentioned, no work can be done in that zone in terms of the landscaping or seawall work that they're requesting. It wouldn't impact the development of the lot.
It would not
No.
impact the development of the lot, or the building height?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, because it's just rezoning that little parcel to what the rest of that lot is, which is consistent with the entirety of Lord's Point.
Just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Any other questions of Clifton? If there are none, we'll move to the public input section of the meeting, and there's a sign-up list in the back for anyone who wishes to speak either for, against, or just make a general comment on this application. So we can get the list. We'll hear from any of the members of the public that wish to speak, and then the applicant will get a chance to rebut or comment on any of the public comments that are raised. And after that, anyone who has spoken in opposition
No one
or in
signed
favor. Okay, so no one signed up. So is there anyone that wishes to speak either in favor, in opposition, or make a general comment on this application? Hearing none, the commission have any other questions of Clifton? Commission wish to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close this public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing. Thank you, Ryan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. What's the commission's pleasure on this application?
Mr. Chairman, and just to check, Clifton, I know we have to make two decisions. Can we combine them?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve this application as being consistent with the plan of conservation and development, and also to approve the zoning map amendment application.
Motion
No
to,
stipulations.
motion to approve both applications with no stipulations?
Correct.
With no stipulations. Thank you, Ryan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair abstains, motion passes. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda is item B. This is continued from, public hearing continued from the April 1st meeting. We need a motion to reopen. I don't think we have to read the legal ad, do we?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to reopen this public hearing.
Motion to reopen, is there a second?
Second motion.
Second, McGarry, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is reopened. Evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Paul Geary again for the Old Mystic Fire Department. We,
I did listen for two. But this, you have to see people for this.
Okay, fine, you did, I assumed you did. So you are seated this evening to act on this.
at the last hearing before it concluded, the commission, through the chair, asked us to submit a management proposal for the property in terms of hours, number of days each year that it would be used, or each month. That was submitted to staff last week. I haven't received any comment back. I don't know if they have comments on that. But I also had the opportunity to look through the documents that Mr. Woods provided in objection to the application, and if I could, I've got a written response to those.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Keeping in mind that this application is only about the use of the rescue trailer and nothing beyond that, I did want to respond to some of the comments and photographs in Mr. Wood's packet. The photos that he presented in A1 through A10, the narrative that he has there is that that the activities of the fire department are inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. And he showed a number of old colonial homes on that. Bear in mind that the department has been on this site since 1961. If you look at the photos in A1 through A10, you'll find that the only house that is not consistent with the architectural style in there is actually Mr. Wood's house. It's contemporary, built in the late 80s. Most of the other pictures are from houses that were probably built late 1700s, early 1800s. So I'm not sure that the argument that there's an inconsistency with the fire department being there carries any water. The photos B1 through B3 that he shows simply show the trailer where it is. I can't tell you when those photos were taken, if the trailer is in the exact same location, but the location of the trailer now is where we sited it so that it conformed with all the setback requirements under the special use application. Photos C1 and C2, the claim is that water was being directed to his property and sprayed into his yard. This is disputed, but we also own the property over in there. That's the gazebo area where they were aiming the hose. I don't know, and there was no complaint lodged with the department that somehow the members were spraying water into his yard, but he appears to be making that as part of this objection. With regard to photo D1 through D3, it shows the floodlight on the property. That was installed on a Connecticut Light and Power pole. It is not ours. It belongs to CL&P or Eversource, and it was installed at the request of the police department to light up the parking lot at night so that there wouldn't be any activities in there that caused problems. That being said, we are going to reach out to Eversource and make arrangements to redirect the beam of that light. Photos D11 through D13 show the department trucks parked and vehicle on the property. This is a legally permissible use of that property, so I'm not sure why that photo is in there other than to continue to bolster a claim that we don't feel is meritorious. Photos E1 through E2 show two vehicles that are parked on the site. There doesn't appear to be anything else going on other than the vehicles parked in there, and no explanation is provided by Mr. Woods as to how long they were there, or actually what's objectionable about the two vehicles sitting there. Photos E3 show a delivery truck dropping off lumber. You may recall he said that this truck is parked there. That was a truck that was delivering lumber to repair portions of the gazebo, and it was there as a result of the department agreeing to make, or looking to make some improvements to the gazebo. Photo E5 shows a car hauler which was directed to the site after one of its vehicles slipped the carriage that was hauling it. It was directed there so that the department could assist in putting that vehicle back on the trailer itself, because the department has the necessary tools to do so. Photos E6 is also of the floodlight. Photos E7 through E10 show a Stonington police vehicle sitting in the parking lot. Again, I don't know what the objection to that is. Nobody's claiming they're doing anything wrong, they're just parked there. One thing I can say is, for public servants, the only public bathroom in the north end of town is Old Mystic Fire Department. So maybe that's one of the reasons that they were there. Photos E11 through E14 were taken after the Boy Scouts who used the property for their meetings. They used the upstairs area of the firehouse, and one of the Boy Scout members was having a birthday, and so there was a birthday party held in the parking lot after their meeting. And then photo E15 is a picture of a family, looks like remote controlled vehicles that they're playing with. Again, I have no idea why that is objectionable in a residential neighborhood. There was also a claim that my client failed to comply with the cease and desist order. I want to be clear, because this is important in terms that no cease and desist order was issued. No what I would call a formal required cease and desist order. There was an email, there were conversations, we were asked to move the burn trailer off the site, which we did. When we had discussions with staff afterwards, we indicated that we would come in for a special use application for the rescue trailer, which we did, and consequently, no cease and desist order was actually ultimately issued. And as I said at the last hearing, that's generally typical unless there is an immediate threat to public safety or health, that when a person comes in to get the permit that's required, staff usually does not issue a cease and desist order under those circumstances, because somebody's trying to comply with the regulations, and if you issue a cease and desist, you trigger a whole bunch of timelines for the person to whom it's issued that they then have to comply with, and that essentially makes it very difficult to have the kind of conversations we did with your staff, which were extremely helpful. So with respect to that, we've submitted the management plan, which has, as I said, the hours of operation, the number of personnel generally there. We went high in terms of the numbers, and by that I mean a conservative high. That would be the maximum under any circumstance, but it's typically less than the number of we've listed in there. We would operate from the site on the evenings from 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. It's generally, as I said, on Monday night, and start breaking down at 9:30 in order to be out of there by 10. That is also consistent with your noise ordinance, which limits the level of noise after 10 p.m. townwide. We've indicated that there will be a contact person on site. We can provide the names for those people, but it's typically going to be the chief or the assistant chief or one of the training members of the department. And by that I mean one of those who does the certification for the training on that. I don't know if the commission has any further questions with regard to the application.
Any questions of the applicant's attorney?
I do, if I may, on the management plan you have on item number 3, vehicle extraction and stabilization, how many times a year would that training take place? Or do you know?
I think you're looking at, so we were asked as well to submit just a list of other activities that have occurred or do occur on the site. That's what that is. We're not there yet on that.
Okay.
But it's not a significant number.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think I saw mention of 50 events a year, is that?
So the total number of days for the rescue trailer, maximum would be 50. It generally has not gotten close to that. But because of the way training is scheduled, we could schedule an event for next Monday, and then it would have to be canceled. Because not enough members either signed up or notified the department that they were going to be available. So then you'd have to move it to the next day. Keeping in mind, all these people work during the day and so forth. So we chose, rather than get into a situation where we said we'll do 25 training sessions per year, and then we end up with 26 or 27 because some members weren't able to do that, we put in that number. I understand that it's a bit high, but we don't anticipate that unless something very unusual happens through the course of a year. And by unusual, I mean where certain members were unable to do the certifications on the days that it was being offered, we might have to hold scheduling other times. The best, for instance, I can give to that is if a new person comes onto the department and they need that training and there's not a class scheduled for another month, they could do an individual training with that person on the rescue trailer.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant's attorney?
Yeah, because I have notes that when asked how many you had, it was between 15 and 20, not 25, 26, 27, nor anywhere close to 50.
Gee, I think that's how many we had last year, right? Right, so that's historical, but again, when we discuss this, since we have a complaint from a neighbor, what we're concerned about now is the fact that any time something goes on over there, there'll be a complaint lodged with the town. And so we're acutely aware of that and don't want to be in a situation where we, as I said to Chairman Belke, we've got to bring in a new person. We actually have to train them this week individually because we don't have a class training scheduled for another 2 weeks or something like that.
And you notify the neighbors, is that correct, when there's training?
Typically, we do not.
You do not, so
Right.
then, okay, so there's no notification to the neighbors, which I thought that was something we discussed happened.
I don't recall,
It was discussed if we'd be okay with sending a schedule up to the neighbors.
and I think we probably, we'd have to talk about the logistics for that, whether it's a reverse 911 call or something like
I
that.
think that's what was mentioned.
Right, but we could probably accommodate that. And I don't know exactly how the reverse 911 system works, but, how you get the phone numbers and all that, but I'm sure we have the technology. Let's guarantee that.
Any other questions of the applicant's attorney? Hearing none, Clifton?
At the end of the public hearing, the last meeting, the only thing the commission requested was the management plan, number of events, hours of events. What was additionally provided, and this was responding to a complaint that was sent to or lodged with the ZEO, was about other activities on the site that might be incongruous with the zoning regulations. So the memo from the ZEO is in the packet dated April 11th, and then as well as the complaint and then the applicant's response, which includes the other items like driver training, propane fire training, vehicle extraction, generalized parking for the site, and then pump operator training use for the hydrant. So those are other activities that are going on the site. That's more informational for the commission to consider. It's, again, as we discussed at the last meeting, not under purview for this application, for this special use permit. The report from the ZEO basically says that this has been roughly occurring since the 1960s without complaint. She did not say whether or not that this is a violation of the zoning regulations as they stand, so therefore it wouldn't be subject to an OV or cease and desist at a later point. But that was just provided as additional information for the commission to consider, because that question was raised multiple times. But like we said at the last meeting, it really isn't the focus of this application. The focus is the activities going on with the rescue trailer alone.
Anything else, Clifton?
Nope, that's it for me.
Anyone have any other questions for Clifton? If not, we'll move to the public input. Are you concluded with your presentation, sir?
The only thing I'd like to just add, and when I do the rebuttal, I'll do it now that I'm up here, is that indicative of my earlier comment tonight about feeling like we're gonna be under scrutiny, literally the day after the April 1st hearing, there was a complaint filed with the zoning enforcement officer. So that's what we're anticipating in terms of everything. We're trying to be careful in saying, oh, we'll keep it to this, and then go over by one or two, because we know that'll result in a complaint being filed.
I think in fairness, there was an individual that raised a complaint to the board, and we indicated to that individual that this is not the place to file a complaint like that.
Right.
So that may have been, why it took place immediately after, because we had actually provided that direction.
Right.
So it may not have just been
No,
a, reprisal or anything like that. I just raised it because it did come up, and I'm aware that it happened immediately thereafter, so. In fact, I see the individual.
The moment I responded to your comment about that, I said, well, that's for the zoning enforcement officer. I said, I told my client, there'll be a complaint tomorrow morning, because, everybody's focusing on the activity now.
We always try to provide as much information as we can here, so. All right, so the way that the process works from this point forward in the public hearing is anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or in favor should have signed up on this list. We'll read the names in the order that they appear on the list. You can speak either for, against, or just make a general comment. The applicant will have a chance to rebut, as will you, and we'll go back and forth till everyone has said their piece. So the first person on the list here is Jeffrey Wood. Evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Thank you. So just to clarify some of the things in the response from Giraldi. So for item 3, there was a complaint submitted to Candace about the hoses. So I'm not sure why they're saying there was no complaint, because that was submitted to her with photos and that's on file. So, and a lot of the other objections to the objections are around the various uses of the sites, because they claim it's for training only, that sites. But as we went through the list, you see that it's used for many other activities, not just training. So public parking, birthday parties, scouts, Stonington Police Department use it for, I don't know, multiple things, but they're parked there all the time doing patrols. In terms of the hoses and the photos that I've got, obviously I've been hit by the hose, and then I've taken the camera out to take the photo, so I can't get it when I'm getting hit, I guess. So, there's just a difference in how you take a photo after you get hit by the hose, I suppose I want to point out. But anyway, I just want to make a few more statements about the site. So, and I don't want to rehash what we did last time. So,
We have all that information.
yeah. So I'm not going to go over what we did last time.
It's
but,
all part of the record.
yeah. So anyway, you know, of the 4 sessions we've had, I still haven't had a compelling reason why this small 3/4 lot should be used as the permanent place for this trailer. So despite all the claims of historical use, there's been no evidence presented by Gurati or otherwise that the trailer was on site prior to 2023. One of the core justifications for the special use rests on the alleged historical presence, and there is no evidence for that. I've previously outlined other reasons why the trailer does not belong on the site, and I don't want to go through them. The site is porous and it's multi-purpose in function. It serves as a public parking lot for the general public, the firefighters, the Stonington PD, as well as scout troop meetings, hydration stations for cycling and dog walk meetups. The multi-nature of this site is not acknowledged in the current application or historical use, and leads to real safety concerns, and I've brought these up before the Commission. The additional concerns I've also brought up, including lighting, neighbourhood character, and public nuisance, each of which conflict with existing regulations and state statutes, all of which will be ameliorated if moved to a larger and more secure site. Moreover, I've at least identified another site that's both larger and more appropriately distanced from abutting neighbours, and the size of the site where the trailer will go matters. When training is conducted on a lot this small, space has to serve for both parking and operations, right? Forcing the training activities, including the hoses, into neighbouring properties, which I've noted. And I've experienced this firsthand. And then at the last meeting, the only justification for the Groton site not being used is that it's off the table. Okay, so I sent an email to Deputy Fire Chief Edward Sargent why it was abandoned, and he replied on April 10th, 2024, quote, "The Groton Fire officers decided not to move forward with the training centre due to the restrictions, requirements put on by the town. For example, we would have to provide bathroom facilities, maintain the parking lot, have the parking area around the building cleared of snow, provide insurance, only use the facility during designated hours. All of this would have been at an expense to the Groton Fire officers could not pay for." So this raises some further questions. Are the same insurance and maintenance costs now being covered by the Old Mystic Fire Department at this proposed site? If not, why is it a concern in Groton and not here? And if insurance is being provided by the Old Mystic Fire Department for the people using that lot, then why can't they do this in Groton, right? And all the other restrictions noted in the email seem relatively minor, like providing bathrooms and clearing snow, which is already always done anyway. So we're asked to believe that the towns of Ledyard, Groton, Stonington, Pawcatuck and North Stonington, covering quite a large geographic area, have no other available parcel larger than a 3/4 acre lot to host this training trailer. This honestly defies logic. And Gurati has not presented any other meaningful analysis or evidence showing that all other possible sites have been exhausted. And then just to the site management proposal itself, to me, raises further flags. So while it initially offers reasonable sounding restrictions on times and numbers of participants, these are immediately undermined by caveats. So for example, they retain the ability to schedule at any time, right, between 8 and 10 on any day, and host any number of attendees. So they restrict it, and then they remove the restriction. They say maybe 50, but they certainly don't explicitly rule out 150 people turning up. So those caveats really render the site management plan kind of meaningless in my opinion. In summary, I don't think we're meaningfully further along than we were 2 weeks ago. The management plan lacks clarity and enforceability. The alternative site analysis is absent or insufficient. And there's still no compelling reason why this specific lot needs this trailer. So thank you. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next person on the list is Patrick. I don't even want to try your last name.
Cassidy.
Cassidy, okay.
Thank you.
It's actually very easy to say.
I'm sorry.
If you want to try to read this.
My next career might be a doctor, man, I don't know. To the commissions of the Planning and Zoning Commission, thank you. Good evening, my name is Patrick Cassie. I'm a current and active member as a firefighter and EMT of 3 fire departments and an ambulance corps, all within the town of Stonington. I grew up in Stonington on Al Harvey Road and currently reside in Groton, Connecticut. I currently work for the state of Connecticut as a gaming regulation officer in the State Gaming Division Casino Unit. But in my time off from work, I spend my time in Stonington, either at my parents' house, who still live on Al Harvey, or at any of the firehouses or ambulance corps. The reason why I'm in front of you today is to express my support for the approval of the special use permit for the Old Mystic Fire Department. The Connex box is modified to facilitate rescue training for firefighting operations. This training has a valuable benefit for public safety. Motor vehicle accidents, structure fires, hazmat operations, search and rescue operations, confined space rescue are some of the uses where the rescue training has become monumental in the plan of saving lives. I myself have worked in mutual operations with the Old Mystic Fire Department, where we have developed plans in seconds along the busiest and deadliest section of I-95 in the entire East Coast, according to the NTSB and USDOT, extricating victims in motor vehicle accidents along steep embankments, working structure fires at residence or commercial buildings, brush fires, search and rescue operations, medical operations, and more. Knowing the employees and volunteers of the Old Mystic Fire Department have the training needed in order to successfully save people's lives gives me great confidence in determining mission outcome. There's been a saying that I originally heard on a documentary about the FDNY, and it was from a seasoned veteran firefighter who, if I can recall correctly, had well over 25 years on the job. The quote was, "You can never train enough for a job that can kill you." The men and women have taken on this role to answer the call when someone is having the worst day of their life, having to call 911. You want the most competent, professional, and knowledgeable firefighters to arrive 100% of the time. In my opinion, a limit or cap on the number of people that you want to have, cap on the number of people that you want to have learn life-saving operations should not be a consideration for the permit approval. Why tell firefighters, a lot of them who have donated their time, sorry, we can't train you because we have too many people here, and be turned away from advancing and maintaining their education? Should it be known that the Commission has put a cap on the number of firefighters that is receiving this training? Does the Commission believe in the idea that only certain firefighters should be entitled to life-saving education, and everyone else should just wait until next time, and hopefully an emergency does not happen in between? It should be a reminder of why this permit, what this permit is for, and what is being exaggerated in front of the Commission. One of the areas of concern brought up was the training noise, and the Commission requested the Old Mystic Fire Department submit a proper schedule to follow the noise ordinance. When it comes to the noise ordinance, the town of Stonington has set a town ordinance, nuisance 1.1. It shall be unlawful for any person to create, make, permit, or allow unreasonably loud, disturbing, or unnecessary activity or noise if generated to such volume as to the objectionable when heard within the confines of a residential home or residential premise before 6 a.m. and after 10 p.m., Monday through Saturday before 8 a.m. and after 10 p.m. on Sunday. Such activities or noise shall violate this ordinance when it is of such character, intensity, duration as to be detrimental to the quiet, comfort, repose, or life or health of others, and is reasonably capable of being performed during the hours other than the hours set forth above, or is reasonably capable of being performed in a way which produce a lesser impact on the quiet, comfort, repose, life, or health of others. A solitary act, a single occurrence, or an activity or noise of limited duration would not be a violation of this. But listed in 1.2, exemptions, activities of police, fire, ambulance, and civil preparedness departments and their personnel, and of public utility maintenance and repair maintenance, including solid waste removal vehicles and equipment and snow removal equipment. This was adopted in April 14th, 1997, and effective May 3rd of 97. To clarify, the operations of the activities, the utilization of the trailer is not happening every day, nor is happening every week. There may be a weekend in 1 or 2 months where the training happens for an entire weekend during daytime hours, or maybe twice during the weekday, but it also depends on attendance, weather, current operations, etc. It is common for training to happen between the hours of 6 to 9 p.m. 1 day a week, but because of some evolutions being conducted, cleanup, and the number of people and the complexity of the training, sometimes the training does go over 10 p.m. This is such a rare occurrence to happen. To add to that, I would also say that 80% of the volunteers, not a career full-time volunteer, work normal daytime hours, and by their own generosity. They have given up their free time that could be spent with their families and loved ones. Instead, they have decided to dedicate their valuable time to train for a volunteer job that could literally kill them. This permit also has nothing to do with live active fire. As it was mentioned, the fire burn trailer was decommissioned on the property and removed. The smoky environment that's being created is used by a fog machine where a non-toxic water vapor mimics the environment a firefighter may encounter in a structure fire. There are no flames or ignition being created or introduced. When talking specifically about the equipment, there were tools that were mentioned in the meeting of April 1st, 2025, specifically known as the Jaws of Life. These tools have traditionally been operated off a hydraulic generator. Today, we have hydraulic tools, eliminating the use of a generator, which is more environmentally sound and user-friendly, and now runs off a battery, similar to what today's power tools use. Although it should be known that it is still good to have the old-school hydraulic as a backup. The Rescue Tech 3SR power unit is a hydraulic rescue tool that can run at 80 decibels, and some of the tools from Rosenbauer can run up to 119 decibels, all measured at 1 meter distance from the tool. The hydraulic rescue tool from Hurst, one of the most common brands, runs at 0 decibels while on and not being used, 69 decibels while not being used under stress load, and up to 71 decibels while under stress load. Let me put that into perspective. 20 decibels is the level of a ticking watch. 30 to 50 decibels is considered the average room noise. 90 decibels is the sound of a hairdryer. 110 decibels is the sound of a dog barking in your ear. 120 decibels is the sound of a siren, and a jackhammer is 130 decibels. To be fair and transparent, the operation of the equipment is the aspect, but the material that is being worked on is another aspect. Another factor as to why this permit should be approved is for savings the taxpayers' money. For the Windsor Locks and Connecticut Fire Academy location to be used, there are site and instructor fees that are required. This also means apparatuses will be taken out of service. Staff will have to pay overtime to fill in for the station crew that now has to travel way out of jurisdiction, with fuel and operational expenses, as well as instructor, material, and insurance costs that the Fire Academy requires to be paid. Not only that, Old Mystic Fire Department being a combination department, the volunteers would have to schedule time away from their families, incorporating travel time with all other expenses to go to the Fire Academy. If the permit was to be approved and the Old Mystic Fire Department has on-site training, the station crews would now be able to stay in district and be able to respond to emergencies within their jurisdiction, as well as being able to assist with mutual aid departments that request aid of service. Volunteers can now also spend more time with their families, knowing that instead of traveling over an hour away, spending 8 hours away from home at the academy and an hour back, that a 10-hour day could be broken down to a 5-hour day, or be able to attend operations partially and leave early if needed. Again, this also leaves the on-duty station crew to be able to respond to emergencies within the jurisdiction of the Old Mystic Fire Department. In addition to the trailer being used for training of the Old Mystic Fire Department, they have graciously offered training to the surrounding mutual aid departments, the Stonington Borough Fire Department, Quambach Fire Department, Pawcatuck Fire Department, Wickliffe Fire Department, No Stonington Volunteer Fire Department, Mystic Fire Department, Knowing Fire Department, and I'm sure others have all utilized this valuable training tool to make sure they provide the best service possible to the citizens of their community. This also saves lives, saves not only the taxpayer money, but also having to send out their members to the Windsor Locks and Willimantic, Connecticut Fire Academy, but creates a unified working relationship between departments that operate together more frequently than not. Overall, this is a huge win for all the departments, as well as when we all work together on any scene. We all know our department's strengths and capabilities. The Old Mystic Fire Department has been around for almost 80 years. Starting out as the Reliance Fire Department Incorporated, Chief Richards, who I have known personally for a very long time, has served the community for the majority of his life, starting his career close by at the Electric Boat Fire Department. Chief Richards has undoubtedly been one of the most valuable assets and resources in public service community, and has encountered not only not only recognized on a state and local level, but nationally recognized as well. Chief Richards cares about his community, the valuable services he provides, and the training that is available to all in the fire service. For over 60 years, the rescue training trailer has been proven to be a valuable resource to train in technical rescue training to his employees, volunteers, and the surrounding departments. Chief Richards has been most respectful when it comes to the compliance and specifications, and I'm sure he's willing to make any cosmetic changes requested, as well as any modification that is needed to make sure that the property and rescue training trailer maintains safety while not in use. With the credibility Chief Richards has backed by his knowledge and background, as he could testify as a subject matter expert with the request of the special use permit to continue use of the rescue trailer for training purposes should be taken with the utmost importance and high priority. Again, I'm in high support of the Old Mystic Fire Department and have the commission, and I'm requesting that the commission approve the special use permit, so Old Mystic Fire Department can continue to provide essential training to those that will utilize the knowledge they gain and maintain and apply it to saving people's lives in the field, which they have proven to do in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Jonathan Klein.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
And this is the first time in my long life that I've ever addressed a public commission. So I'll ask for your indulgence.
Just relax and please feel free to speak, as extemporaneously as you wish.
I'll go through a brief introduction, my goal in speaking, who I am and who I am not. I'm a resident of Stonington Borough, a newcomer. My perspective is someone who has seen many other and lived in many other communities. I am a member of the Stonington Borough Fire Department, but I am not speaking on behalf of the Stonington Borough Fire Department or the other fire companies. I'm speaking as a general resident, a property owner, and a taxpayer, and that's my perspective. The goal of my speaking is to urge that you adopt the special use permit and coastal management review applications for the rescue training trailer under discussion. That's why I'm here. My reasons for asking that you support the special use permit, speaking as a resident and a property owner. The first, I have 4 reasons. The first is that I am unconvinced, listening to Mr. Wood's presentations, that those presentations were made are credible, that they were made in good faith, and I must, my reaction to them is that the logic is strained at some points.
The second is that the special use permit may be an untoward precedent. The third is that Woods and possibly neighbors are effectively appropriating long-time municipal assets, from Boy Scout to police department, as well as the fire station and the fire station training, were essentially, as he admitted in the last meeting, private gain. And finally, that the objections to the use of the training trailer and in general to all the other uses puts first responders, which has been discussed, but also the rest of the community and property owners at risk for what is essentially a private person's gain. I've emphasized that I'm a resident for only 5 years and a property owner at 9 Cheeseboro Lane. To review, the land in question has been municipal property for over 60 years. The residential neighborhood, and specifically his residence, and possibly the residences of others, arose after the municipal use for firefighting. The land in question has been used for Stonington fire protection continuously for 60 years. And that use has varied in nature and in intensity and should be expected to continue to vary in nature and intensity. The special use trailer is not a new use. It's been said at this meeting that documentary evidence has not been presented, but I have it from the other members of the department, and only he is questioned. No one else has questioned the prior use of this trailer on this property. That's why I'm suspicious of the good faith of his presentation. So, this is not a question of Old Mystic Fire Department imposing a novel use on a long established community. Instead, this is an instance of a tiny community, or at least one individual, imposing its private wants at the expense of a public need and of public safety. Now, before I go into things, I remember some stuff you said at the last meeting. And so I've just
talk to us, please.
Okay.
You know,
I wanted to know.
all of it is through us to
Right.
anyone else,
Right.
but,
So, I don't have a copy of his submission, so I'm speaking from impressions and what caught my attention.
just direct it to the board.
Yes.
You can't question anybody else.
Right.
In the audience. That's under our protocol.
One of the things that struck me was his effusive praise of volunteers and of volunteer first responders, and his unwillingness to allow the greater community and its volunteers, and I believe most of the board are volunteers?
Correct, all of us. Well, our staff members.
All right.
It's a constant.
When I speak to the untoward precedent, if the plan for Stonington Town is to rely on the volunteering of its citizens, this is a small but definite precedent to restrict what we can do, when we can do it, how we volunteer, and how we contribute. He's clearly put a great deal of effort into trying to stop the use of the trailer and to inhibit the use of the fire station. He has said, and this is why I urge the community to discount his the commission to discount his what he's sent to you. Because although he said we have failed to identify someplace else to use it, he has not either. He has said that this property is not appropriate, there ought to be someplace else, and despite all his research, and all his photographs and all his submissions and all his protests over the years, he's failed to find another place. He basically said, well, you know, Groton doesn't have a good reason. He has no plan. This is a planning commission. I don't see a plan of how to adapt or adopt first responder training, especially volunteers, to the current needs or future plans for the community in his submission. His and others' plans is to say that I have my personal needs, so the greater needs of the community should be subordinated. And a lot of the reasoning is, well, preposterous. Yes, people train with propane gas tanks. I speak from personal experience. My officers had me practice using fire extinguishers on the same tanks we use for barbecues. I don't see where his neighbors should be he should be required to get a special use permit to use a barbecue. He objects to the dropping off of lumber. Do we require a special use permit? Or do we prohibit the dropping off of lumber by a contractor in his larger neighborhood? These are small points, I think, that he raises, but they speak to the issue of a good faith analysis by him. Mr. Wood's objections covers many aspects of use, not just the rescue tower. And he wants limitations on what the fire department does, when it does it, how it does it, how many of it does, how many people do it. And following his logic, may we then place the same restrictions on firefighting activity on his own home or the homes of the neighbors he claims to speak for? We have gone for 2 years, I understand, without this training facility, thanks to his objections. Mr. Wood admitted it could be objectionable if Stonington and its firefighters were appropriating a residential neighborhood for Stonington's general public use. But Mr. Wood let it slip at the last meeting that he would not have bought his home had he known that was really active fire station. I believe him. But his failure to do his due diligence in such a major purchase and his gullibility at believing what I understood to be a rather casual reply by a realtor is not a reason to put the greater community at risk and to put the idea of volunteering like you do to be subordinated. His problem with his realtor is not our problem. Finally, I want to echo what Lieutenant Cassidy said, which is the delay for, what is it now, about 2 years in this kind of training, and further delay puts all of the people here in Stonington and in the surrounding communities at risk. And as to traveling, I had training at Old Mystic, 6 days of fire pump operator training. If I had the state trainers came down to Old Mystic, which was gracious enough to allow it for just about any firefighter. We had people from the Navy base. Without this facility, at a minimum, I would have had to travel 600 miles on my own nickel and my own time so that Mr. Woods can enjoy his purchase. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Christian, again, I can't read the penmanship. Is it Pecor or Pator?
Peter.
Peter. Okay. 2 first names. Good evening.
My name's Christian Pita, and I've lived in Old Mystic for 48 years, so I've seen a lot of what goes on around there. Boy, that guy sure picks on Jeff Woods a lot, huh? I just like to
The public can say whatever
Yeah.
they want to say, as long as they don't swear at each other.
I think the fire department should be able to train as much as they need to. And I'm here because my parents own the property right next door to the, where they're doing this training in this container. And I live up the street. I spent my whole life in Stonington. So as a kid, I used to walk by this site to school, the Old Mystic School, when it was still open. And my whole life, me and all my friends, you know, we called it the junkyard because there was always just tons of cars out there. And some of them would be there forever, it seemed like. And they get done practicing on them, they cut them apart, they leave them there. It's definitely been a changing site, and I can understand that firemen need to train. It's very important. And I don't think this one tiny little site in Old Mystic is putting everybody's life in danger like they're impacting on you. They need places to train, and that's for sure. The world's always changing, and you know, we need to figure out where to do these things. Those containers and the other one that used to have real fire in it that was at this site were up at the oral school at one point, and there was talk of other locations. The Old Mystic Fire Department is a tiny little spot, and I don't think they should be restricted from using that site for training, but I feel like it is getting out of hand for the site. This one container they have there is huge, and you know, it just looks like an industrial park. And Old Mystic is it's just a tiny little community. It's a cute little New England town, and you know, as it's been building up, there's places for these things. There's also, the world is now like, with Florida's all their storms, and insurance companies are now really pushing hard on everybody to keep their yards completely clean and changing their roofs long before they need to be changed. And they have algorithms that figure out what people need to do to their homes, or they're going to drop your coverage. And you know, if everybody is conforming to these new ways of life that we're all living in, my personal feelings are that, yeah, the firemen, they need a place, but they just keep pushing on this little site and doing more and more on it. And it really feels like it's just getting out of control. They brought a ton of containers over there, and now they're down to one. But it's just huge. They talked about putting up barriers so that you couldn't see it, but it's towering. And I feel like you know, with a little bit of work, there probably is a better place to do it. I don't know, didn't they talk about the town dump having a good spot for it at one point? I can't believe that there isn't a better spot than right there. And then once this gets approved, they're gonna have something else they want to put there. They're always looking to do more. When I was a kid, it was just a bunch of junk cars out there that they would cut the roofs off of. And, you know, nobody really cared. It wasn't that big of a deal. You know, it was always ugly to look at, but now there's lots of trailers there. The town only permits one unregistered vehicle on the property. It's always more than that. You know, I don't know how far this goes, you know, 20 years from now, after this has been allowed to happen for a long time, there's gonna be more stuff there. They're gonna just keep trying for another thing. And like I said, I'm not against firemen training. I just feel like there's gotta be a better spot. I don't know how much money this costs. They're talking about saving tax dollars. Fire tax is expensive, but I don't know. This container's huge, and I just feel like it's too much, and it's such a small site. I I don't really want to meddle with the fire department. I feel like they're great guys and they're doing a good thing for the town, but I feel like they're pushing and they're taking away property values. You know, as they keep making it more industrial looking, it's just starting to look horrible, and you know, the neighboring properties are suffering for it. I mean, there's an argument that they're saving lives, but are we supposed to just, our properties aren't worth speaking up for because they want to fill the area with containers that they train in? It's a tough decision, but I feel like I think there's a better place for this trailer. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other names on my list here. I see one gentleman who I know is dying to speak, so.
No, I'm not dying to speak. I'd rather be home having dinner.
If you just identify yourself.
Yes, I will. Marcel Dufresne, Old Mystic. I've lived in Old Mystic for approximately 38 years. And my property is in Groton, but about 200 feet from the fire department property, right across the Whitford Brook. I just want to clarify something, maybe for the record. The question of the site use plan and the things that go on at the property. At the last hearing, I requested that the commission ask them if they knew of all the activities. And my interpretation was that that was not your responsibility as part of this, but that I could ask for a site use plan, which I did. The next day, I sent a letter to Candace, the zoning officer, and I asked for a site use plan, and I think you have a copy of my letter. It details what I was looking for, and some of which was clearly answered, and some of it was, the response from the fire department was relatively vague. So the bottom line is, I think the information you're working from was not requested by the planning commission, to my knowledge, but it was requested by me, then transmitted to you, then released to me after it was part of the file. That's correct? Okay.
I think what we said to you, just to clarify what you said for the record, is that you were asking us questions about things that weren't pertinent to the application.
I was trying not to do that.
Yes, but that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
And what we said was, and you said you had a complaint about certain things, and this was not the place to lodge that complaint, and we referred you to Candace. That's my recollection of the conversation, so, you know, the rest of it, I think you've stated pretty accurately.
Okay. I'm going to start with what I think is the most crucial point, and legally, I think, raises some serious questions about the rationale that's offered for this use. Namely, that it is a municipal facility, okay? And I believe if you look at Connecticut statutes, because I've looked at other states, I couldn't find Connecticut clearly, the Old Mystic Fire Department is not a municipality, okay? They are, and I will read you a couple of things to that effect. Just very briefly, from the Groton website, they kind of define what, in Groton Old Mystic, fire service is provided by independent fire districts, not a municipal fire department. Each fire district has its own governing board and raises taxes on properties within its area to fund services, according to the Town of Groton website. For the convenience of taxpayers, the Town of Groton collects fire district taxes along with regular property taxes and remits them to the district. Okay, the clearest, so my basic point is that they are not a municipality. And when I asked Candace, the zoning officer, for her opinion on whether the uses that she listed were acceptable to zoning, she did not render an opinion. All she said was a municipal facility with its associated structures and activities is allowed use in the R20 zone. My point is this is not a municipal facility by any definition, okay? Here's just something quickly, just because it was the best that I found for the state of Minnesota State Auditor's Department. The memo says, is your fire department a municipal department or is it an independent nonprofit firefighting corporation? The answer to this question determines a number of important issues. Who has control over fire department funds? How is the Affiliated Relief Association's Board of Trustees composed? Who approves association bylaws? And who is responsible for funding Relief Association benefits? When a city or town has its own fire department, the department is classified as a municipal fire department. Firefighters and municipal fire departments are considered city or town employees for most purposes, and the municipality issues them paychecks. Firefighter hiring and discipline decisions are made by the municipality. Neither the town of Groton nor the town of Stonington has any control over those items. This is an independent taxpayer-financed service that is a convenience, again, that Groton and Stonington both collect taxes. So that was my first point. This is not a municipal facility. So to say that it is allowed, an allowed use, is irrelevant because it's not a municipal facility. Okay, my second point to Candace's memo, the zoning officer's memo, I don't know what her length of tenure is with the town, but I've been there, as I said, 40 years, and I knew very well, and I still know the surviving member, of the people who used to own Mr. Wood's property, okay? And she says in her memo, let's see if I can find it, I don't want to belabor this, but, okay. Any uses that have been happening prior to the trailer have been happening for years without any complaints. The only okay, that's the point. We all know that zoning officers don't go out looking for zoning violations. They respond to complaints to their office. To say there were no complaints means there were no complaints to the zoning office. I can tell you that the previous residents there had many conversations and complained repeatedly to the fire department going back to the 20 years ago. Okay, so there were complaints about the junk cars being left there after training and the lights and various other things. I don't have record, I doubt that there's any documentary evidence to that, but I can say, and I could provide testimony, if you will, or a statement from the previous owner stating that that was in fact the case. There have been complaints about that. So she may not be aware of them, may not be paper complaints at the at the zoning office, but there were in fact complaints. And the idea that again, I think that there's been an improvement, to be fair to the department. The junk cars that were left there after excavation or extrication and whatever they do, it's gotten better, but it's still unsightly. And at minimum, I think this commission should stipulate that any cars that are left there need to be removed within 48 hours, because easily to contract to somebody to remove them. But I mean, she does say, and I think it's interesting that she uses the term vehicle carcasses. Gives you an idea what they look like. It's unsightly and really not appropriate for a residential area. One thing in terms of, I don't know how much the commission is looking at the site use plan, but the last item I think is glossed over. It says training in technical rescue operations. No details whatsoever in terms of what's involved, how often it happens, you know, what the risks are of those types of activities. So I think that's a little vague. Mr. Wood raised the point that the Groton Fire Department, City of Groton Fire Department, one of their reasons for turning down the prospect of having a facility was insurance costs. I think it behooves this commission to know just whether or not the department is adequately covered for the time. I mean, fire department work is high risk by definition. But the idea that this is going on, this is an additional tax on residents of Old Mystic Fire Department that is subsidizing all these other departments. One of the gentlemen said, all these other departments are very supportive of this. Sure, it's not in their town. They're not paying the additional taxes that Old Mystic residents are for this activity. So I do think, in fairness to this is not your bailiwick, if you will, but Old Mystic Fire Department has a responsibility, I think, to make it clear to taxpayers in the Old Mystic Fire Department what the cost of insuring those activities and subsidizing all these other departments. But more appropriate to the planning commission, I think, the question is, are they adequately covered for all the 50 people or whoever might be there at one time for training? I mean, this is high-risk business, and I think we need to be sure that we're not going to end up as taxpayers of Old Mystic with a huge insurance claim against us if someone gets hurt and the insurance isn't adequate to cover it.
I don't know that risk management is covered by zoning anywhere in the state of Connecticut, but we can certainly find out.
Well, I'm just saying,
I don't think it's anything we could stipulate. There's nothing in zoning that speaks to required insurance, except for bonding on certain construction projects. Nothing to do with liability policies or that type of risk management. So
well,
I don't know that we could do anything to follow up in that area.
I respect that. In response to what Mr. Peter said, I think it's interesting, his father, who's probably not here at the moment in the area, but spoke against this proposal 2 years ago when it was up. I know the proposal was different, but he was a neighbor and he spoke against it. And the gentleman who spoke and who personalized, I had to call him attacks against Mr. Wood. I think he was misspoken when he said no one else complained. It was all about him because I spoke at the hearing. I'm six feet. I'm hard to miss. You know, I try to make an impression. So I think that was unfortunate that he personalized it in that way. In summary, I guess I would say what others have said, that this is just not an appropriate use for this neighborhood. It impedes or hurts property values. A lot of the material that's there and is sometimes left after is unsightly. I've lived with it for nearly 40 years, and I am a supporter of the fire department. I've always tried to have good relations with them. They've come to my aid in a number of ways. But I think this, you know, I'm going to make one final point, and I was trying to avoid saying this, but when people say from Stonington Borough, come and tell us that we need to accept this, how about considering taking it to the borough or Pawcatuck? No one else wants this. None of the other departments are trying to establish kind of thing. So I think Old Mystic is carrying the burden for a lot of people for something that I think, frankly, the immediate neighbors are not fond of. They may not speak out for various reasons, but I don't think they that it's a place that is appropriate to that use. All right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I've gone long.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay. I would like to stress that the distinction about this is not municipal use. And I don't think you can avoid that fact. And I think if there are legal challenges to this, it would be based on the fact that the fire department is not a municipal operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Applicant, desire rebuttal time?
Just briefly, sorry, can I didn't write my name down. Can I give a historical note, which I think is.
I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
Jonathan Fontanella, 16 Smith Street. This is pretty short. And I have the oldest historical note of tonight, even beating 38 Hurricane. 115 years ago, this property was owned by George Tingley. He was a photographer. He went around and took photographs of immigrant families at a discount. Those were Irish and Italian families at the time, which were persona non grata in the early 20th century. Mr. Tingley's wife died in a fire. Tragically, after that, he quit his profession. He sold his property to a poor immigrant family, and he became a full-time volunteer firefighter, as a matter of fact. So Mr. Tingley looked at the system at the time, and he felt that his life would be better spent improving that system. When my grandfather sold this property to the fire department in 1961, he did it because he was broke. He had no expressed altruism in it. But the fire department had to work very hard to buy that, and the interest again was to improve the department. I have an unearned feeling of pride about this lot because of the good that it's done for the department and the community, and I take pride in paying my fire tax. And I hope that whatever we do here, whatever decision we make, we can keep looking for something better. that we continue to support the Old Mystic Fire Department in growing to meet what we've discussed tonight as a growing need. We want to grow, your fire department has to grow too. And, you know, I hesitate to make these kind of suggestions, but I would be happy to know that one of the lots for sale on 184 went to the department and not a gas station or something. You've clearly given this the diligence it deserves, and I hope everyone understands that, and I certainly appreciate it. And then I have some notes at the end here. Chris Pita said that this site has been ignored by the town. Everything in Old Mystic is ignored by the town. The bridge, which does pose a danger to residents and the fire department, has been a pass-the-buck issue. The rest of us are aware of zoning applications in Old Mystic that weren't even allowed to cross your desk. And I think that the Old Mystic Fire Department might be feeling neglected tonight too. Anyway, I think that they should be able to continue training, but we should be looking for something better so that we can grow. And I look forward to supporting them in doing that. And I hope the rest of the town will join
Sorry,
me.
so your name again?
Jonathan Fontanella.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Yeah, I would. Melissa Watson, I live in Stonington now. I do own property in Old Mystic. I lived in Old Mystic, grew up in Old Mystic. I've owned property in Old Mystic, or had been on property in Old Mystic for 52 years. I was a volunteer firefighter eons ago when I was 16, and then I'm back in service now. I did train way back in the 80s at this site that they're talking about. I guess my only comment really tonight is one, well, a fire district is a municipality. Their fire district that has their municipality. Because we have our own fire district where I live now, we're a municipality. Anyway, we're talking about training in the trailer, correct? The trailer is the issue?
Yes.
The trailer is what's on the table. Well, extricating from vehicles, things like, that's not in the trailer. Whatever else is going on the property is not the issue tonight.
We understand that.
Trailer. Trailer happens inside. There's no mess from that. There's no glass. There's no cars sitting around. There's no nothing else. And yes, other departments go, but guess what? We pay to go use it. No one else is funding that for us. And we all have our own insurance. Every single department is insured, and their members are insured through them. And if you're a member of multiple departments, you might be insured by multiple departments, as many of us are. There's no need for them to have any more insurance because we're going over there from Quambog. We're insured.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does the applicant desire rebuttal time?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman. With regard to Mr. Dufresne's comment that it isn't a municipality, I'm going to hand staff a copy of House Bill 2707. It's a special act number 376 that allowed for the merger of the Old Mystic Fire Department into one another, and it indicates in that public act that it is governed by Chapter 7 or Title 7 of the Connecticut General Regulations in the area in that governs fire districts. So Title 7 of the Connecticut General Statutes is the municipal law in the state of Connecticut. We are a municipality, just like Stonington Borough is a municipality. You find that in the eastern part of the state, there's still little villages and all that have their own governing boards. Those were all created by special acts. So there's no doubt that the Old Mystic Fire Department is a municipal entity for purposes that it was created. It wouldn't be able to tax the residents within the district if it wasn't. With regard to the insurance on the property, there is insurance, as the woman just said, for everybody on that. The department has its own insurance. They wouldn't be able to put the trucks on the road if they didn't have liability insurance on there. The idea that we should find another property somewhere else other than here just seems to me somewhat preposterous. We own this property. We bought it for the purposes back in 1961 to operate and facilitate the existing firehouse on the property. To tell us that we have to go look everywhere else and exhaust all the other possibilities to be able to find a training center before we can use this, because that was sort of the implicit, we haven't looked around enough, so don't let them use this until they come back to you and tell you, well, we can't find something. It's just ridiculous. We don't tell Mr. Woods what to do with his property. The zoning regulations set what the rules are for everybody, whether you like it or not. I hear people come in all the time saying, well, when I moved here, oh, no. That's not how it works. When you moved there, that's the way it was, okay? That's the way it is today. We are here under the applicable regulations seeking a special use permit for the rescue trailer and only the rescue trailer. And I think this commission is well aware what the focus is tonight on that. But the idea that we should find some other place, or, you know, what's interesting in terms of Mr. Woods pointing out why Groton didn't go forward with it, is because every expense that he referenced in there, bathrooms, snow plowing, insurance, liability insurance, we already pay for the existing site. So if we were gonna have to pay for the existing site and then go to Groton and pay again, it would make no sense. And that's ultimately one of the reasons I understand all the departments and the town of Groton itself said, no, it's not gonna happen, it's a dead deal, because everybody's gonna have to contribute to this, because the town didn't wanna foot the bill for that, they wanted the departments to, so. But I think with regard to the trailer, we've submitted the management report on here, and I think we are within the aspects of the regulations that would allow this commission to grant the special use permit tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Is anyone who spoke, yes, sir?
Just to follow up on the municipality issue, which I think is central to this, I would ask that the commission request an opinion from the town attorney that could cite case, you know, the piece of paper that was presented was a bill, as I heard, that's not an approved act, or I'm not sure, but all the research I've done indicates that this is not a municipality. It has the ability to tax, but so do special districts, and they're not municipalities. Bridge authorities, they're not municipalities. They're special districts with the power to tax. But this issue of whether the fire department is a municipality is central to whether or not this use is acceptable, because it's not acceptable in a residential area. So I would ask the commission to get a legal opinion from the town attorney as to whether all the fire departments, volunteer fire departments in the Stonington, and by extension in the region, are municipalities or not, under the law.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else wish rebuttal time? Okay. Does the commission have any other I'm sorry?
I have no.
Oh, okay. Okay. If no one else wishes to speak?
My only rebuttal or comment is, I mean, this is clear as day. The Connecticut general statutes are very clear and consistent. If not a official municipality, it's a quasi-municipal facility area and use. It has a taxing authority, which means it can qualify as a municipal entity.
There are several organizations that are special municipalities, and
Correct.
in Connecticut, they're established under Title VII, which of the general statutes. And I actually worked for one of them. Metropolitan District Commission was a special municipality, and it was created under the same portion of the regulations.
Yeah,
but it was considered
Title VII is very clear.
was considered a municipality, a special municipality, which is a municipality. If no one else has any other questions, I think the appropriate motion to close the public hearing is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close this public hearing.
Motion to close, is there a second?
Second the motion.
Seconded by Gary, thank you both. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
What's the commission's pleasure on this application?
Mr. Chairman, and just quickly, Clifton, so we would have 3 decisions we would need to make, waivers, and just wanted to make sure we had all the justifications for any of those waivers.
Correct.
Okay. Coastal area management application and special use permit, and do we do it separately or as one?
You can do it as one.
Okay. And as I understand it, we have 3 stipulations. I'm going to add a 4th to my motion. So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the waivers requested for this application, the coastal area management application, and the special use permit application with the following 4 recommended stipulations. Number 1, the applicant shall address outstanding comments to the satisfaction of the town planner and zoning enforcement officer. Number 2, final plans shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Number 3, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the final plan shall be signed by the commission and recorded in the town's land evidence records. The fourth stipulation I would like to add is that a proper gate be put on this trailer, not just the chain, but a proper gate to prevent anybody, when the trailer is not in use, that nobody, children, whatever, can get up those stairs. The chain's simply not, in my mind, adequate.
It's
So a
blocked
proper
now.
protective gate. if
It's
that's-
blocked now.
Okay. All right. So with those four stipulations, that's the motion.
Motion to approve the special use permit and coastal area management review applications for a rescue train trailer. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Seconded by Gary. Thank you both. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the management plan that was submitted, which I think is part of the special use application. It doesn't really, it's inconsistent. So, originally, it was 15 to 20. We talked about it a little bit more, went up a little bit. The management plan now comes up to upwards to 50 a year to take into consideration scheduling issues. We've got neighbors in a neighborhood that doesn't want it there at all. 50 a year is over 4 a month, five times a month. I think that we should think, sure, every once in a while there's a scheduling issue, and I can understand not hedging it to 15, which is what their original number was of the trainings. But I think, 330% increase to deal with scheduling additions just is really way over and above. So I do think that we should limit that. I think the other part of the management plan has to do with the number of people. And I don't think it's a matter of the number of people necessarily, but perhaps the vehicles. And I don't know if we can in some way manage that. Upward to 50, I believe, is what the management plan said. I can't get my Wi-Fi, so I'm going off my phone, which is very hard to follow this document on. So I'm thinking if there's 50 vehicles in that lot, along with whatever training's going on, et cetera, it seems quite tight to me. So I think we should maybe consider something there.
In the form of a restriction?
In the form of a restriction. I don't know how much carpooling goes on with the volunteers coming from the various areas, but it seems like they're on different schedules depending upon their work and home lives, et cetera. So I think we should think about that. The hours of operation, sure, we have this ordinance 8 to 10, I believe, but I don't think we want to have every session be, a 14-hour session. So I think we should talk about that. So I think the management plan is overly generous, and really, to be quite frank, isn't really a management plan. They just listed, oh yeah, let's put this down, so that nobody complains. And I'm not sure that's true management, and it's not certainly what I was after from the department. So, for all those reasons, I think we, at this point, what's on the table for the special use permit, I can't support it. Not that I can't support having the trailer there to be used for the purposes, but it's the management plan that we asked to have thought put into, considering all the comments that we've heard. I'm just not sure that we've got a management plan that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Anyone else have any comments?
I agree with Lynn, and there was a comment made that occasionally it goes after 10. I thought someone said that.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it can't occasionally go after 10, ever. It has to stop at 10. I think the management plan is weak and very, there's a lot of hinging on it. It's usually this, but it could be this. It's mostly this, but it could be, we're training Monday and Tuesdays, but maybe Saturdays and Sundays. It's gonna end at 9:30, but we could go past 10. There could be 15, 20 people, there could be 50. So I think I'm sort of with Lynn, this needs to be way more defined.
Well, the commission can consider stipulating a time, I mean, if they.
No, when you say like this
wants
whole
to-
thing, like everything is just a little too vague, vague in my mind, and, I would like it tightened up more.
Any other comments?
I think it's weak too. That being said, I would cap it at, the initial thing was 15 to 30 people, I believe. I would say 30 people. Not 50 times a year, I cap that at 30 times a year. I think the initial said ended at 9:30, I'd say ended at 9:30, and that's the way I would suggest it.
And not like maybe 9:30, maybe 10, like
No,
at
no,
9.
No, I'm not, I
No, I'm
totally
talking
agree with you.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it like, right, like actually
Okay.
set hours.
Yeah, no, it ends at 9:30, and that's.
I agree. I agree. I think those are reasonable restrictions based on what we heard originally, and I think it, as you've said, they can manage within those restrictions and,
But I'm not sure I
and
agree.
still use the site for the purpose that they're requesting.
I actually think we should be a little bit more limited on the management plan. This is a big operation, they're dealing with a lot of different departments, et cetera. They've gotta have some kind of oversight, and hopefully it's managed well. So, originally it was 15 to 20. Okay, that was less. Went up to 50. Okay, I say we cap it at 25. I can see capping it at 30 because maybe they've got 30, and this is the point, is it 30 people, 30 vehicles? I don't know.
They say 30
Half
personnel.
vehicles.
They say personnel.
I'd say keep it to personnel.
Yeah.
Keep it to personnel. Okay, so, it's a small lot. That's where they park, right? There's a few spots near the station itself. I don't know how many, but I think it's a handful. I mean, I don't think it's a large lot. And there's gotta be room for those vehicles and then the actual training. So, I mean, based on the lot size, 30 vehicles, does that make sense? Does that even make sense? I don't know. Do they
Are you
bring
asking
their,
me?
yeah, based on the lot size, I don't know.
I don't think it's fair to ask him to
Well,
try
well,
to,
they park it
try to do a layout
Well, yeah.
in his mind.
I can't
You know,
answer whether or not it's.
if they're hosting it now and it fits, with 25 people, I think it's reasonable to expect it. If you restrict it to 25 moving forward, I'm sorry, we're in regular session now, no one else can speak. But what's your thoughts on modifying your motion to include any of what's being discussed here?
No, I guess,
Only thing, can I add something?
yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
You can't limit the number of vehicles because it's just not a. You can,
If you
I mean,
limit
you
people,
could,
you're
you
gonna
could,
limit vehicles.
limit personnel, but just functionally, the way that the lot operates and the fact that it's like an undefined parking area, you can't limit the number of vehicles, whatever fits, I guess.
So that's
But we
more-
limit it by personnel.
But everything else you mentioned on capping at personnel, on capping at hours of operation, those can all be stipulations of approval, the number of events per year, all those you can add as stipulations. Only thing I'll add is, how's it gonna be enforced?
Yeah, and I guess.
Well, then we have another, that's
No,
another
I
issue.
mentioned- I mentioned
Good
this-
faith, they've
Yeah.
come to us, we've set the stipulations. I think we have to have good faith in the fire department as a good neighbor, that they're gonna abide by those stipulations. I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to have that good faith. And
No, I know,
if they don't, then.
this has come up on other applications before
Well,
the
then,
commission too.
you know, then there's
Enforcement
another
issue.
road of a mechanism there, but.
Then we're gonna hear about it, we're gonna hear about it
Exactly.
afterwards, and
But we-
people are
we
gonna
have
complain,
to-
but,
we have to
but
say-
I agree, enforcement is a different issue.
So if we say, you know, 30 people, okay, and then the hours of operation, I just don't think it should be from 8 to 10. I'd rather think to myself, it's 8 to 10, but no more. You can have it anytime between 8 and 10, all right, or 8 and 9:30, because they've got to clean up, and that does include the cleanup, okay, not just the training, but the cleanup, because that was mentioned before. But I think it should be a limited number, not 8 to 10, 14 hours.
I disagree with you on
Like, we
that.
could just say 6 hours,
I think
between 8
maybe a
and
better
10.
way to management is or to manage it, or to put the stipulation is a hard stop, all, including cleanup ends at 9:30.
Yeah, they vacate the site.
That's it.
Vacate the site at 9:30.
Because we're already limiting the number of people there, so if we're limiting the number of people, we wanna give them the opportunity to at least carry out the training for all the people that they feel they need, right? So if we're saying 30 people on here, I think we need to give them a time window to work within.
Right.
Is how I would think of it.
Right, I agree with that.
So what are you thinking, that they would have 2 trainings during the course of a day?
They could,
That would,
I mean, that's during the course of the day,
And would that
right?
count as 2? Would
So
that
you'd
count as
have,
1?
you'd have 30 and whatever the count is, I mean, that's up to them to manage,
Okay,
right?
so-
To what we're stipulating, right?
all right, so 25 trainings a year, using the trailer, no more than 30, and the use is between 8 in the morning, the training, so whatever, and my assumption is that they get there at 8, not that it starts at 7:30, the setup and all the cars and this, that, and the other thing, and everybody's gone by 9:30, is that what we're saying?
I like that better than 10 o'clock
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
Agreed. And so they had said no more than 50 annually, you're saying 25? That's a
30,
total.
30.
I'm saying
30
30.
people,
30.
25 trainings.
I would say 30 people, 30 trainings.
I would,
I think that's a fair compromise between what they have put forward and what we're going to.
But it's
limit.
50% more than what they used last year. That doesn't make sense to me, I'm sorry.
Okay,
You know, that
But
doesn't
I
make sense.
think
It's 50% more than what they use. If they feel like they have to use it a lot more because something changes, they can come back and ask. But it's 50% more. That's,
I think 30
They had,
should be.
they had more people at the sessions though, Lynn, so, you know,
no, they
I
said
think
they
that
only had, they did not say they had 50 people at a session.
when we asked them to really go back and look at it, and they came forward where they really considered, you know, what they did, that I think the answers were extemporaneous at the last meeting, and I would not want to hold them to those. I would hold them to what they put in the management plan.
So.
And then the final thing I'd like to say is, I do think we can put some kind of a buffer requirement around this, is that correct?
Yep.
And I think that having that buffer around the lot, we don't really need to say it's around just the trailer itself, but around the lot, I think would help in separating the use of that lot, you know, from the residential area.
Yeah, it would help with the visual
Yeah.
interference.
Mhm.
I could deaden some there.
Can I ask a question, though? Is that something we could do as part of this specific application?
Yeah, you
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Now, last time, when we were not talking about the training trailer, but we were talking about the fire trailer, okay, which I know we're not talking about, we talked about a berm and trees and this, that, and the other thing.
Berm and arborvitae.
Yes, and I believe that was acceptable. So maybe that's, since it's acceptable and we had thought that through, maybe that would do
You
it.
have to be careful with berms, because it can be an obstruction to drainage, so.
Oh, okay,
But,
The function of the berm was to prevent water runoff,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
because they're gonna use the hoses on that.
So
Since there
maybe-
aren't gonna be hoses facing that way, which was where the slope down was, I
Okay.
wouldn't say a berm is necessary.
Okay, but maybe we can put some kind of a buffer, a tree line buffer,
Mhm.
hedge, arborvitae along that, anywhere where there's, you know, the
Agreed.
houses.
Agreed.
So I'd like to see that. I mean, the depth of that buffer, I don't know, 10 feet, does that seem?
10 to 15?
And
Yeah,
evergreens, so that it's year-round, because my assumption
Right.
is this will be used in year-round.
You want to withdraw your motion, or withdraw the second, withdraw the motion and rephrase it?
I can amend the motion to.
Amend it, okay.
The motion so that we would be changing these following items on their management plan for the rescue trailer, that there would only be a maximum of 30 people who would be training at any given time, that there would be no more than 30 trainings annually, and that a buffer of arborvitaes or trees of approximately 10 feet be put around the area of the trailer, or the wide or
Perimeter, right?
Perimeter,
Perimeter.
but not around the trailer, but
Perimeter.
the lot.
Yeah,
around the
lot.
perimeter of the entire lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And the height of the evergreens to start with should be, I don't know, evergreens grow fast, I don't know,
They do, but I'd say
8 feet?
8 feet sounds
whatever they
good.
can, yeah.
All right, 8 feet.
And then,
The hours of operation.
and the hours of operation.
All activities shall
All
terminate by
activities,
9:30.
Including the
not-
cleanup.
Right, and not
Would be clean.
start, and not, gathering should not start before 8.
So amended.
Second, okay?
Second motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair abstains, motion passes. Next item on the, let's give it a moment for the room to clear. I think most of the people are probably here for this item. Yeah. Well, he's here, he waited, let's see how it goes, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank John, we have sort of an unwritten rule here that we don't go beyond 10. You kind enough to hang around.
Who voted on that one? I don't recall
I
voting.
thought it was 10.
Is it a 2-hour presentation? Okay.
When I was on this commission before, we were here to like.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take the discussion outside,
We
please.
used to have our meetings at town hall. We had to call the police department because the alarms would go off at midnight. We'd be there 1:30, 2 o'clock. Carly will remember those days. It was crazy because I'd be like falling asleep. I mean, I get up at 4. Just like,
Folks, we want to continue the meeting. The hour's late here. If we could clear the room, please.
Careful walking by your house.
John, just give it another second, sorry. John, I think we're good to start. Good evening, sir.
Open the hearing, it's a public hearing.
Yeah, we have to.
Do we need to read?
Lynn, would you read the legal ad, please?
Yes. The whole thing, or?
No, just the portion in the agenda is fine.
I'd like to open public hearing PZ 2513RA, Stone Ridge Senior Care LLC. Zoning text amendment application for changes to ZR 5.3.7.A.1 -2 and ZR 5.3.7.D.1 to include revised maximum height, floor area ratio, buffer, and development requirements applicable to congregate living facility use.
Thank you, Lynn. It's our motion to open the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Ryan, thank you. Is there a second? Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Public hearing's open. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is John Casey. I'm a partner with the law firm of Robinson and Cole, and I have the honor of representing the applicant Stone Ridge Senior Care LLC this evening on an application for text amendments. We're here to propose text amendments to allow appropriate development of congregate living facilities here in the town of Stonington. With me tonight, we have Ted Bowles, who's the Project Development Manager for LCS Development, which is a parent of Stone Ridge Senior Care LLC. We have Mike Segan and Josh Ignatz from Richter and Segan, consultants on the project, and project architect Omar Barrientos from SB&A Architects. The applicant, no surprise, operates Stone Ridge, and they have plans to complete the final phase of their facility. This was proposed back in the day. Obviously, we're not here tonight to talk about anything particular, but just to give you some sense. But the current zoning regulations, as you've all become aware through your comprehensive rewrite process, are restrictive on congregate living facilities. And so we're here tonight. We have proposed changes to the maximum height limitations, floor area ratio, limitation on the number of units, and buffer requirements. As noted in Clifton's report, a lot of these were proposed and considered in your rewrite process, in particular recommendation number 25, which is entitled Make Congregate Living Facility Standards Less Restrictive. And we didn't go as far as Clifton proposes in his report, but I'll touch on each one as we go through them. And you're welcome. We have no real opposition to what Clifton proposes, but to be clear, the amendments we're requesting are the ones that we feel are necessary for reasonable final development at Stone Ridge. So first is in section 537. This is the bulk requirements for congregate living facilities. There's two provisions we were looking to change: the height requirement and the floor area ratio. So for the height, we provided two options. One was to allow a 60-foot building and 4 stories where they're above a parking level. So that would require the developer to have basement parking, which would be a benefit. It takes more cars off the lawn, so to speak, less impervious surfaces, but still allows 4 stories, to provide as many units as is reasonably possible on the site, in keeping with provisions of the Plan of Conservation and Development, which I'll get to. So we proposed option A for 60 feet with the above a parking level, and then we proposed a more simple, just 60 feet. Clifton suggested just to go with the 60 feet. And I'll let him speak for himself, but basically all of Clifton's recommendations are just to keep the regulations simple and straightforward and not have conditions that would apply in different times. As for the floor area ratio, we propose increasing it to 0.45 or 0.45 where the property lot size exceeds 30 acres. Currently, the minimum lot size is 15 acres, and we could see where limiting FAR to only bigger lots would be appropriate. So we provide both those options. Again, Clifton suggests just going with 0.45 to keep things simple. Also in that section, again, sort of previewing what I assume Clifton will say, is He incorporated recommendations from your rewrite process to reduce the minimum lot size from 15 to 5, and to change the setbacks to 30 feet or twice the setback in the underlying zoning district, whichever is greater. We didn't feel a need to propose that for our particular site because all the proposed development, if we were able to move forward, is on the interior of the site, and we don't propose any changes, to setbacks or anything like that. Just a couple things with the buffer. That's all. So turning to the buffer, we did look at your recommendation number 25, which had proposed just reducing it to 25 feet of screening, but we didn't want to go that far, so we just proposed 35 feet buffer at all lot lines, 30 feet of screening on side and rear lot lines, and 15 feet of screening at front lot lines. We feel this would provide appropriate buffering in keeping with the recommendation, but maybe not going as far to remove all screening along the front lot line. And then the final is unit distribution. There was a very specific regulation saying no more than 300 independent living units, 50 assisting living units, and 60 convalescent beds. The reality of how these facilities work is that that distribution doesn't always work, and we would propose really two options, again, just raising the number of independent living units to 330, or actually combining the independent and assisted living units into one bucket, 380, which would give an operator more flexibility. And maybe Ted could speak briefly on that, about what the market is looking for. So having the independent units, the flexibility to have more independent units is helpful to provide the mix of housing units. And so that's what we're looking for. Clifton recommended actually deleting the last two sentences of that provision based on a statute that doesn't allow you to have specific square footage on each unit. So again, we don't object to that change if you want to include that as well. So those are the changes, and I know it's late and I feel a little breathless, but I'll keep rushing along here. And happy to answer any questions at any time. The plan is I'm just going to talk, but we do have the team here, so if you have any questions for anyone, please let us know. So briefly, as you know, but I'd just like to say, this commission is always free to approve changes to its regulations through its legislative capacity, and so regulations aren't carved in stone; they can be moved. And a quote from a case is that you're free to amend your regulations whatever time, experience, and responsible planning for contemporary or future conditions reasonably indicate the need for a change. And we feel that this is that circumstance here to allow this type of development to occur. In your regulations, you have section 16.3.3, which talks about impact statements for zoning text amendments, and we have provided, and I'll go through quickly, statements regarding consistency with the Plan of Conservation and Development, consistency with the comprehensive plan, and conformance with the general zoning purposes. So briefly, consistency with the Plan of Conservation and Development. This is consistent with several goals, including section 9.1, which states, as our age composition changes in the future, it is anticipated that Stonington will need greater diversity in its housing stock, and also says with more smaller size households and more people living longer, it is anticipated there will be a demand for smaller housing units with maintenance or other services available. And this is exactly the type of housing that's Stone Ridge provides. And actually, maybe this is a good time, just ask Ted, just a little bit about the market demand and the unit mixture, that you're seeing, in terms of like how the regulations work, not necessarily Stone.
Again, my name is Ted Bowles. I'm with Life Care Services out of Des Moines, Iowa. We help manage and operate about 130 communities across the country. So as we've been going through this process and as we see these new generations coming into our industry and our residents, the mix is changing over and over year by year. So some of these regulations are, I don't even know how old these are, a little bit limiting in what we're seeing and what the market demand is and how we see the properties growing and evolving. So that's why we want to make sure we have the right mix on the community to provide all the services we need for all those future residents. So I can answer a little more questions than that, but it's just changing demographics, changing buyers, changing, going from the baby boomers to the silent generation, that kind of thing coming up. So any specific questions I can answer?
How does that relate to the regulation? Like, are you getting more, you don't need sniff beds, you don't, like, what's the?
Yeah, I'd have to go through the exact numbers, but I believe it's limiting and saying we need more of the independent living instead of the AL living that we're trying to get on community, so. It's just a mix that happens in every community, and it's changing as we get evolving, regulations are changing as those residents are coming in and as we're growing through communities and just the buying time, so.
Is the change in communities requiring larger individual units?
Not specifically, a little bit. They're going away from, we're getting into semantics, but the old nursing home where grandma went and there's small little units with no little kitchens. Everybody's eating in the communal dining room every single meal. We're seeing a lot more kitchenettes in the units, a little bit bigger sometimes on the independent living units. Making sure the memory care units are big enough, have their own individual showers. We saw a lot where the assisted living units would not even have their own bathrooms in them. There'd be a communal bathroom or communal shower area or bathing area. And we're seeing a lot more of that change into private residencies for those AL units, which is something we're going to be doing here. So.
And that connects.
Great question.
Yeah, connects to the FAR, including more services, more common areas as well.
Correct.
It's not all in the units, but the units are getting bigger.
And let me just ask you one other trend question. When you have these facilities and a lot of people entering this type of living, they like outdoor space. So are you seeing an increase in the amount of outdoor space
To go back to
activities?
what John said, a lot more amenities, a lot more different dining venues, a lot more maker spaces, art spaces, communal spaces, whether it be quilting, painting, even puzzle rooms. We're seeing a lot more of that than, again, just the one dining room, the one little multi-purpose room, and the one little reading room. We're adding a lot more of those amenity spaces. Something we call like almost a grab-and-go bistro, kind of like a Starbucks almost per se in a community.
Okay.
Bring more life to it. And then yes, and the outdoor is something we're thinking of too. We're getting kind of the plans, but we're definitely thinking of that also is how we bring more outdoor space in, like an outdoor grill, outdoor seating areas, bocce courts, cornhole games, things of that. We can have some activities, some things for people to do, so absolutely, yeah.
Going to the building section that you provided, which is very helpful actually, and that shows the cross-section through the four-story building.
Yeah, we have a board of that.
I think it explains, and I think the commission should direct their attention to it, that the part of the reason for the relatively large variation in building height is that it's average ground, and although we're only proposing 4 stories, in some cases, because of average ground elevation, you almost have 5 in some cases in order to grade to existing terrain. So, we really need to focus. When you look at the actual ridge line of the buildings, it fits in a lot better than the 65-foot height would make you believe when you look at the cross-section that's provided, because of the slope of the site and the requirement that you measure building height from average existing grade, and there's sort of a walkout on one side of this building, so.
But this zoning amendment is for all.
I realize that.
Okay, I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure.
No, I agree, it's just, it sort of explains it here, and I would just, before you render judgment on it, look at this, because it does help to put it into perspective.
Well, picking up on that, just saying, just also hitting on some other plan of conservation development sections in 9.1, one of the specific recommendations is to encourage increasing housing options for an aging population. And these regulations were, I should have noted it, I think they were passed in the 90s.
I was on the commission when these were passed.
Yeah, right, was it the 90s? We looked it up, I'm sorry, I should have, but.
I remember when these were written.
And, I think there's always a concern about impact, because it's not just for a particular property, it's for the town. But we know there's not a ton of these in the town. And actually, we provided, we switched, sorry, Josh. We actually went through and I have a few copies of these, smaller copies, if I can pass them around, I guess. We looked to see where this would be impacted. So this might be easier to see. So on the board, you guys want to share?
Yeah, there are very few sites that are actually large enough.
There's very few sites, so.
Almost none.
On this handout, everything in gray are the.
By changing the site to 5 acres, it makes it a lot more.
It does, but I'll just go with my presentation first and I'll let Clifton do his own. So we looked at this and we looked for, so everything in gray, those are the districts where you can actually put a congregate living facility. Then you also need, the other limiting factor is sewer. So we looked at the GIS layer for sewers, and then we looked at parcels over 15 acres. And so, what did I say? There's 7 red dots on there. So those are 7 options for undeveloped parcels over 15 acres. And then there's just one other site up near where Liberty Crossing would be, that's over 30 acres. And I, personally think, I don't think anyone's putting congregate living up there. So we think overall, the impact of these regulation changes are small as we propose them. So without changing the minimum lot size. Knowing that that's always going to be an issue when it comes to a text amendment. So going on, I thank Clifton, he in his report pulled out a couple other sections of the Plan of Conservation and Development that would be support this, including supporting existing businesses. It's working with local businesses to assure their expansions take place in town whenever possible. Promoting economic drivers, including but not limited to retirement senior care. So we think it complies, is supported by the Plan of Conservation and Development. We believe is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which we all know is the existing zoning map and zoning text. As I said, this exhibit, the one I just handed, helps show that it would have limited impact. We're not changing any of the zoning districts where they would be allowed. We're only modifying some very specific use requirements and standards. And we have to remember that every congregate living facility approval requires special use permit. So it's not like this is just opening the door for people to put up 60-foot buildings all over town. They would still have to come to you, show that the buffers are met, that they're in meet the character of the neighborhood where they're set, and that all the other protections that go along with a development like this are met. So it does provide more flexibility, but it's not open sesame. So we do think it's consistent with your overall zoning plan.
Just a question.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's conceivable to actually build this this type of language into it, and I defer more to the experts on language than myself in this case, but would it be possible to live with a lower building height with a possible exception where terrain requires, you know, a walkout that would increase the, so in other words, you're not really getting another story, but you have the situation that we have here.
That's their proposed option A.
That's our.
That's what they
option
have
A,
in.
That's what they.
It is, okay.
That's an option, yeah.
It leaves the existing language, which has the,
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
So,
and it requires the 4 stories be above a parking level.
because it doesn't open it up to every other zone where you don't have this situation. Now you're gonna get, you know, the 65 feet, where that's the average height above a flat plane.
Yeah, yeah.
And the intrusion and the visual interference is gonna be a lot more. So I actually like that language better. I know that others may not, but I think that safeguard helps, at least me.
Right, and so that's our option A, we leave in the sloped lot language.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I just ask about that, because, and this is, I don't know the answer. A slope lot, like in your option A, the way it's worded, does that mean a naturally sloped lot? So somebody's not can come in and.
Create a slope.
Dig it out.
Exactly. Is that true?
It's average
I think-
finished grade.
I think you'd have to have a lot that would lend itself to, you know, it's almost
Yeah.
natural
Like it
slope
almost becomes
has to
intuitive
lend
to build a
itself to
slope, yeah.
this type of development. I can't think of how you would create this.
Okay,
The cost of the cut and fill to do something like that would be astronomical.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't know, okay, I just wanted.
But it's a good question, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I actually.
Which I think again, makes it a good safeguard, you know, that you couldn't necessarily take advantage of it in that way. So it is a good question.
It's measured from the finished grade, so it's whatever at the end state of construction.
At the end state.
Not the beginning state, correct.
So you could also put in some kind of a limiter as to how much fill you can bring in.
We don't do that for anything else.
I don't think you have to. I think the
Self-regulated.
practicality of it just
Yeah,
wouldn't permit
The
it.
cost would balloon.
Okay, all right, I just did, thank you.
I don't want to move dirt or rock if I don't have to, I'll tell you that. It's the last thing I want to do.
No, you'd have to create a big hole in the site. You'd never drain it, so
Yeah, you wouldn't know what you were.
you'd have to pump the stormwater out of it.
So I have a quick question, like the minimum roof pitch, why do we care about that?
It's in there originally, I don't think you should care.
I was like, what is that even, like, who cares, like, why don't we just take that? That's
Your height's gonna be your height, whatever roof
I
style.
guess we'd ask you were here when we did it.
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah, why
it was
you
like 2
should've-
o'clock in the morning and listening to our.
I think
No,
it's
no
because-
excuses, please.
Sorry, it was 40 years
Because we
ago.
don't want the flat roof with the
Parapet.
Mansard.
Yeah, they don't
and
want to
all that.
industrial kind of
over it,
flat
yeah.
roof, yeah.
I mean, Stone Ridge is very well done, and
I agree.
But it doesn't, the sentence doesn't even make sense, it doesn't say the minimum roof pitch shall be, it just says the minimum roof pitch of 6 inches over 12 inches, that doesn't even say anything about it.
Yeah, that's why I recommended removing it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna make that as part of the regulation,
That
it
makes
said
sense to
shall be,
remove it.
shall be this, but it just doesn't even make sense.
These,
like a
these
statement.
applications obviously all go in front of the ADRB as well, and then before the commission, so that when you guys can discuss the architectural viability of
Of the
these
roof
projects individually to each application.
I like that roof pitch in there, because I think we have far too many flat roofs with fences around the top to hide air conditioning. Okay.
We, as our approach was to, propose as few changes as possible. So,
Also, the buffer, You know, the other thing that's nice about Stone Ridge as well as Sonicare, you know, is, I mean, it has a nice buffer around it, especially in an area that's very busy and could get busier depending upon other development in that TC80 zone. And I think it kind of makes for a nicer development for the residents because you've got, you know, a nice green space between what could back up to an industrial, much more industrial buildings, et cetera. You know, where Stone Ridge is, you're kind of surrounded by green, right?
Right.
But that may not be the case.
Everywhere. So,
And even in Stone Ridge,
Right.
so I don't know about, having all the buffers.
Well, what we
down
did,
to-
so just, so you know, what we did is we, you know, you had the buffer requirement, which was 50 feet wide from all lot lines with 35 feet of screening within the buffer, except where an earth berm at least 4 feet high is constructed. Then the buffer may be reduced to 35 feet with 30 feet of screening, and then access is allowed through the buffer. No construction, parking, or other uses shall be permitted within the 100-foot buffer, even though it's not a 100-foot buffer. So we looked at the recommendation, and we sort of looked at the built environment, and you know what would be reasonable, and that's why we just suggested 35-foot wide buffer at all lot lines, which is consistent with what's there already, and then 30 feet of screening at side and rear lot lines, which is consistent with the recommendation, because really it's those side and rear lot lines you want to really protect any neighboring uses from. And then we kept the 15-foot screening at the front lines to have some screening, but you know, sometimes screening on the front line, I don't know that's always the best sort of planning or architectural thing, because all of a sudden you just have like a row of arborvitae, you know, like, and it's not aesthetically pleasing. So we kept in the screening. We don't really plan on changing the screening all that much. I'm trying to think.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah,
And
so that's
talking
where
about
we
buffer
tried, we didn't
screening,
change
you're
it
not
too much.
talking
I know,
about,
yeah, the recommendation was to go a lot further. But again, with the, you know, less is more. That's why we just proposed it the way we did. And again, you know, any project would require special use permits, so you'd be able to have a review of those elements. And I know my experience with the ADRB, they like buffering in appropriate circumstances. They like to see the building sometimes, but block some other buildings. So I think this makes an applicant, a developer, sort of consider buffering the way we had proposed it, but also gives some flexibility. So, and takes out some confusing language about, you know, a 100-foot buffer that really doesn't apparently exist. And then,
What do you mean?
well, because
They refer to it, but there's not a thing.
yeah, the current language says 50-foot buffer, then at the last sentence says 100-foot buffer.
Oh, I see.
And my thought about the screening, it's the screening that's really more important, because you have the setbacks that are the buffer
Right.
as well.
That's
Right.
what I was thinking, the setbacks, they haven't mentioned the setbacks.
So it's really all about.
No,
the
we don't,
screening.
yeah, we didn't propose changing any setbacks.
Mhm.
You know, this is all about screening and buffering, which are kind of interchangeable in the way they're defined in the regulations. I have it here somewhere.
So one of the things that we did for the development that's right across the street from Stone Ridge, and we did this specifically because, you know, it's kind of a country road, right? And we wanted to kind of maintain that feel. But also, we wanted to protect Stone Ridge residents from looking out on, you know, more of an industry type of development. So we required a berm, and it's worked quite well, and actually, we've gotten a lot of compliments on that is a great way to just have it still look natural, but really, because it's not a high berm, but it's
It is.
substantial, and
It's
you
actually-
notice it.
It's high.
It's high, no,
And, but it serves the purpose
Right.
well, and it offers that buffer, and I think berms are really important and very effective for screening, and so.
Yeah, I think a berm is a type of screening, so you could use it, and then
Having the language there doesn't mean you can't use a berm or require a berm.
Yeah, that's not,
Yeah.
but on a,
You know, screening, as we discussed
Right.
during the rewrite, can be berms, because berms are better sound barriers,
right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
right, than just the trees. But the screening can be a combination of any or, and then when an individual application comes in, that's, up to the purview of the commission to decide
So
which
you'd
is gonna be
rather that
best.
than just have it.
So
berm.
if it's
Okay.
removed here, it doesn't mean you can't
So
not use
screening is just
berms.
more wide,
More
wider.
encompassing.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
wondering
It
if
just
you
sets
should
a-
just
yeah.
put the berm in.
What we did is just say it's this many feet, not like, well, if you have a berm, it's only this many feet, but if you don't have a berm, it's 5 feet wider. What I think you really want to say and what the see, and what the purpose of a berm is that, the screening is blocking, the one use from another. And it can be a variety of elements. And so just leaving it plain that you want this much of a buffer, this much of a screening, it does, provide some flexibility, which we think is a good tool for a developer, property owner to have.
So let me ask you, so, if you say 35-foot wide buffer on all lot lines, and then you want to put a substantial berm in there, right? How wide is a berm?
Much wider. Normally the steepest slope you can get it on a berm is like 2 to 1. And that berm, I think, is flatter than that. The berm you're talking about the apartment site right across the street from this.
Yeah.
I think it's flatter than that. So you probably couldn't use a berm in the 35-foot buffer.
That's my point. That's
Yeah.
why I would like to see it. This allows for a pretty big facility, and I think it would be, you want to say to yourself, we want to be able to have that kind of a berm, and a 35-foot buffer, I don't think allows that.
Doesn't.
So,
Not that height.
yeah, I don't know how to work the
Yeah.
math, but that's what I'm.
Well,
Yeah, but
and I was just reminded that there is a berm on the front yard, existing, we have a berm.
Mike Siegel, Richter and Siegel, and Landscape Architects. There is a berm along the front of the property on Jerry Brown Road, it's 12 foot high, and there's a 35-foot deep berm.
Right.
So it does work in the 35.
You could use a combination of berm and evergreens.
Yeah.
That would, if you look at just an example, the evergreens that Dog Watch Barbecue used, we talked about those
Yeah.
last meeting. Those type of monster evergreens and a less substantial berm, you could definitely do something meaningful with that combination of berm and tree in that 35-foot width. So it is conceivable, I think, to get something of equal height, maybe even better taste. There are some people that have talked to me about that berm that they think it looks like a dike as opposed to a landscape.
The one across the street,
And,
yeah.
it does look more like a flood control dike than it does a landscaped element to me.
Yeah. We were in that, let's have everything natural.
So maybe a combination of
Yeah.
things, but, I take a look at what this particular developer did on this site, and, if they apply the same approach that you've taken to landscaping out there, which is very tasteful, I don't think we have to worry about it on this particular site. As you're suggesting though, Lynn, we have to think about it elsewhere. So, because this applies everywhere, we've got to think about that as well. But I do think that the 35-foot permits a combined berm, planted buffer that would do the same thing that the buffer at the hospital site does, or Harvard Healthcare site does.
And remember, we're not, you still have the 100-foot yard.
Yeah, the setback
So you have
is the same.
a setback, and then in that setback, you're gonna have a buffer.
Other
and
elements.
screening, depending on what yard
Other
you're in.
landscaping.
Yeah, and there's other elements that can be part of a buffer, or, so. And your screening, screening is defined, dense
There's so much
vegetation.
that breaks up the visual interference of the fact that these are three-story buildings that are there now, that the site is very, very
Really nice.
tastefully done. The architecture and the landscaping combined
The
have a
trim.
tremendous visual effect.
Trim.
I think that's something you can, for future developments, everything there was in compliance with the regulations. Everything is allowed and perhaps required, so I think the way that.
I guess the difference, John, is that, the regulations permit, very small caliper trees to be used, and this developer chose very mature species of trees to put in there right from the get-go. And that makes a huge difference. A huge difference.
Yeah, so I can basically wrap up. I think it goes without saying, that, like I said, consistency with the comprehensive plan, but also consistency with the general zoning purposes set forth in section 1.1. We are proposing amendments to specific requirements for congregate living facilities. As I said, they wouldn't apply to any of the use in town. The zoning districts where these are allowed would remain unchanged. The proposed amendment to buffer and screening requirements would reduce them but not eliminate them entirely, as we've discussed. Ensures that appropriate buffers are maintained between these facilities, adjacent uses. And we don't, none of the amendments would reduce the zoning regulations' ability to preserve important natural inland and coastal resources, prevent overcrowding of land, avoid undue concentration of population, or facilitate, and would facilitate adequate provision of transportation, water, sewer, schools, parks, everything. So those are the general zoning purposes. I think these regulations are in line with those, and that based on that, in compliance with the POCD, the comprehensive plan, the fact that the number of eligible properties, as we propose it, is small, and that any proposal would still require special use permit approval, that the minimal impact is something that would allow you to grant the amendments. And I think maybe we gave you some options, but based on our discussion, I think what it seems you're focused on is for the maximum height, it would be option A, to leave the sloped lot language in there. To maybe limit the impact on the floor area ratio provision, it would be our option B, which would say that the 0.45 would only be on properties that exceed 30 acres. And then we don't have any other options. Our proposal for the buffer requirement we discussed, and then for the unit distribution, I think our option B, as Ted discussed, to allow 380 independent or assisted living units and no more than 60 convalescent beds. So those would be the options we would propose. And I'll let Clifton carry his own water. So. But I understand where he's going. And I think some of them don't impact us, so like on that last one, to remove the unit size, it's completely understandable.
And why do we want to do that?
Because we have to, because it conflicts with PA 2129.
State statute. State statute.
Can't do that for any living space.
Like ADUs.
Any sort of residential living space you can't regulate the size of, that's regulated by building code.
Is this the same architect that did the initial project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really
It's good to
regulating
know.
the size of the living space, though. It's regulating the percentage of units per lot.
No, the
Right.
second,
It says
second
each independent
sentence.
living unit.
Right, it says
Specific.
5,000 square feet of site area. So I think to be like, all right. So for like every,
That's,
I mean, I read that different. So if you have like 50 assisted units, like the whole site area has to be 50 times 5,000, like to include parking, and that's how I read that to be. I read it not to be per unit, per site area. So we're not limiting we're not saying each living unit is 5,000 square feet. I mean, God, that's like bigger than it's like 3 times bigger than my house.
no, the very last sentence is the one that you can't do.
Shall require 700 square feet.
Yeah, okay, that, well,
The one before
but
that.
that's the same thing, I think that's the same thing. In my mind, it's not regulating the size of the unit, it's regulating the number of units you can have for like the entire lot.
Which is.
It's
what
a density, yes, it's a density calculation, it's not it's not regulating the size of the living space, it's regulating the density. Thank you. That's how I read that to be.
It's not how FHI read it.
That's how I read it. And I wrote them in 1992. But that's how I took it to be more of a density thing. I mean, 5,000 square feet per unit is,
Is that the conclusion of your presentation, or do you have some more, Counselor?
No, that's our conclusion. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the attorney or any of the representatives?
Yes. Is that we have the site architect?
I didn't take it to be per unit.
No further questions?
We can't, I just don't know this, and this is just because you mentioned it, that the trend is to have individual bathrooms, et cetera. We can't put that in here, right? Yeah, okay.
The trends are gonna change and evolve, so as we move forward in the next 10 years or 15 years, there'll be a new trend for something different, so.
Okay. And do we want to should we think about putting anything in here having to do with solar, with,
It's in a different part of the regulations,
Yeah, I was
right?
kind of thinking that, but it seems separate from where we're in here.
I just didn't know, since this is a large facility, if we would say, okay, you're gonna have up to 308, parking lot should be solar, something to consider, at least.
I think you guys are looking to put the parking lot
I was about to say, we're
underground.
gonna try and get as much park as we can under the
Underground.
building,
Right.
to not build a big surface parking lot, take away the green space and impervious surface, so, yeah, that was the goal, is get as much park as I can under the building.
That is very sustainable in the sense that, you don't really dramatically increase the impervious area that way, using the building as a podium.
Yeah.
That way, I think it's very effective.
I mean, building code's gonna require us, we have so many spots, so I'm trying to keep as
Correct.
many of those under the building as possible.
Is the ratio far less for this type of facility? I mean, a lot of people drive, I know, but not all people drive, right? So is the parking ratio similar to, or would it be less?
No, tell me that one.
So,
If you can.
Omar Barrientos, SBI Architects. So really, senior living is one of the main factors in trends and how people use it is, no matter what age we're at, we don't want to give up our choices. We want to continue to be able to make our own choices.
Right.
Including driving. And, but the fact of the matter is, people love to have choices, but they seldom choose to really have more than one car per unit. We are seeing where maybe younger people are coming in and they may have 2 cars, but, traffic studies have proven over time that there's very little impact as far as vehicles. So,
We have plenty to say when we don't like somebody's design, but we should say when we like somebody's design. Believe me,
appreciate that.
that's a first-class facility.
Yeah.
We're gonna mimic
You've done a
it,
great
too.
job, and I never say it.
Believe me, she would tell you it's irrelevant.
I spent 7 years of my life, and I really enjoyed working here, so glad to be back.
It's more of a design issue, but yeah, we do plan to mimic what's there as much as possible, so it'd look like it's been there forever. Been the same.
Any further questions of the team?
No.
Clifton, what do you see as the next steps on this thing? We have options to pick from, and how do we work through this?
Can choose them now, and the applicant can come back with the revised based off of your selection. You could continue the public hearing and decide at the next meeting.
How much time do we have?
Plenty.
Okay.
Sign it.
Would everybody like a chance to absorb the
You could take my
presentation
recommendations,
and
which I think are better.
talk about
That's the
options?
thing, if we don't, it's gonna get changed twice, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, so.
I mean, you've
Doing
heard
the
all the
zoning
discussions,
rewrite,
so
Yeah.
you know where we're kind of going,
Yeah, I think probably.
which ones we
coming
like, which
back.
ones we.
Yeah.
Talk about options at the next meeting?
Yeah.
I do think, I would like to just, again, this is all about how big the build is and where the build is, but any kind of design features we can't put in this particular zoning text, because that's separate, right?
Correct.
That's just, okay.
My only comment, because I haven't got to speak yet, is to combine it with the language.
We're not gonna leave you out.
Yeah, oh, thank God. The only thing I would say is that I generally support the application as written. I don't see any negative impacts. I think the diagram shown with the potential lots that could be developed using their proposal shows how minimal that impact really could be for other sites using the regulations as proposed. The only thing I would add is that the commission may recall over the period of February through June of this year, we talked about this congregate living facility issue in terms of the zoning regulations rewrite, and the commission, although you haven't voted whether or not you're in favor of the recommendation, you did agree to forward this recommendation to reduce the lot size from 15 to 5, to reduce the yard requirement to at least a minimum of 30 feet, to replace the buffer requirement with a screening requirement altogether, which we've already talked about more recently as why you would just have a screening requirement and not a buffer requirement. Apply the screening to only side and rear lot lines, reduce this depth requirement from 50% to 20 of the required yard, or 25 feet, whichever is less, and then remove the one conflict with the state statute. So taking their applications, taking my personal preferences to not have conditional language or if-then statements in zoning regulations, because that's unnecessarily convoluted, extremely difficult to enforce. Whereas, since these are all special use permits anyways, the commission already has its authority capacity to massage those requirements based off the site. So adding these conditional statements or conditional requirements are already doing things that you would be allowed to do during a normal special use process. So I will always be in favor of simple conceptual requirements and language, especially as it applies to zoning regulations. So anytime that there's a suggestion of an if-then, I will always say I'm not in favor of it. So with that, I took the options as preferred by my department and then combined it with the what the commission has already tentatively agreed to bring to a public hearing. And so that's why you see the reduction from their requested 15, which is the current, to 5 acres. The frontage requirement stays the same. The setback requirement is reduced from 100 feet to 30 feet, or twice the setback of the underlying zoning district, whichever is greater, which applies to the wide variety of available zones. maximum height 60 feet, so then you don't have an if-then statement. Floor area ratio as proposed. The buffer requirements, their proposal is perfect for the site, but further reducing that to just what the commission's agreed to with the, they replaced the buffer requirement with the screening requirement. There wasn't a size given, but your buffer, or your screening should always be less than your setback, so less than or equal to. You can't have a buffer or a screening requirement that is greater than your building setback. It has to be less. So if your setback, setback is 30 feet, then it has to be, then 25 is a lesser number, so that's why that was updated. And then the unit provision, removing the density component because you're already limiting the number of total units. So if you have an inconsistency between the two, it doesn't state which one you would choose over the other. So just limit to the total number, and that will be dependent on site.
And you also have the floor area ratio.
And the floor area ratio is going to limit it itself too. I know when FHI went through this, the question from the commission was, well, how many more sites become available when you reduce it to 5?
Exactly.
And it wasn't much larger of a number or a difference of location than the ones that are already proposed.
Wasn't huge at all.
It wasn't really that impactful on where these could go because they're required to have water and sewer. So you're really limited in undeveloped parcels in key corridor locations. And the only key corridor location that has that development capacity is along Liberty Street, Route 2. So that's why I went one step further upon the applicant's request and made it even more lenient because the commission's already tentatively agreed to forwarding something that's more lenient.
And obviously, those are all acceptable to the applicant. So if you wanted to approve that tonight, we would be perfectly happy with it.
I kind of feel like, well, first up to 60 feet, we did not change 60 feet.
No, that's the only thing that is
Yeah,
requested by
okay.
the applicant.
I feel as if the changes for the rewrite were larger changes that need to be voted on by the public in the overall rewrite, versus this is kind of a halfway there, which I would feel comfortable doing as a commission.
As an amendment?
Right,
Yeah.
as an amendment now. It's kind of how I feel about it. That's just my personal opinion. I totally agree with you, though, about the ratio of independent or assisted. I don't know why that was in there, unless it was to ensure that there was diversity in the town, that you had so many of one versus the other, and that's why it's in there. And thinking about it, seeing this written that way, I kind of think that that's important to have, you know, both type of living situations available in the town. And so when you have a big project like this, stating that, I think is a really good thing to have in there versus, no, we're only gonna do independent. And then somebody needs assisted living, they have to, you know, go to an entirely different town.
Yeah, when someone talked about affordable housing and available housing, they have to talk about housing that's available for people of all ages, and we really haven't provided for that here.
Right.
Good point.
So,
What's the commission's, well, we haven't finished the public hearing yet, but if you're done with your
We're done.
presentation.
Yeah.
Clifton, do you have any further comments? Does anyone have any other questions of Clifton?
no, but I'd like to sit, I would rather not vote on it.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah,
it cleaned up.
I think we have to hear from the public,
Yeah.
you know, through the rest of the hearing, but I agree with you, Lynn, I do
Oh,
agree.
yeah,
Okay, so at this point, Clifton, if you have no further comments and there are no further questions of Clifton, we'll move to public comment. And we have Carlene who would like to speak to us on this.
You know who I am, Carlene Bruno,
Evening, Carlene.
getting late. I'm not sure I really want to speak, because when I first looked at this thing, I was confused, and I was concerned, and I'm even more confused now after listening to all this discussion tonight. It seems like you're trying to mesh what they were trying to do with what FHI has done, and you already sort of tentatively agreed until it's voted on by everybody. And it's just leaving a really bad taste in my mouth. I think you should have let the applicant come forth and put forth whatever they wanted. And then after we have the big thing at the end, then you decide what's going on. Because first of all, I don't agree with what FHI, and you already tentatively agreed to. I'll say what I have to say somewhat, but I just don't know where we're going with this. As you know, it's the RR80, the RA40, the RM20, and the RM15, and the RH10 zones that this all applies to. So there were 4 things that I was going to address, and I guess I still will, but I'm even reluctant to do it. I don't like the idea of switching to 5 acres, from 15 to 5. If all Stone Ridge is interested in doing is putting one more building on their property, this doesn't affect them at all anyway. Quite frankly, I think this should have gone into an HI zone. And maybe you should think about that when you're doing this rewrite. And I don't know why someone wouldn't want it up there on Liberty Street. It's plenty of land. If they really have to have sewer and water, then of course the LI 130 zone would be out. But that would be an area where there's a lot of land. Relating to the height, I am flabbergasted that in all of those zones that it's allowed, the height is only 30 feet. But going to 60 feet is double. I think that in a 60-foot high building in an RM20 or an RM15 is going to be a standout. I don't think that's going to look very well, or the people in that neighborhood are going to like that very much. I am also concerned if you do put that height addition in there, that other people is going to encourage other people and for other applications to come before you and say, well, you did 60 feet over there, you could do 60 feet for my property too, or my project. And talking about the berm that exists now, my recollection of what happened back then was that the people at Stonebridge were complaining that they were seeing it. And that's why the berm appeared or was required. So it's not the other way around. And as far as buffers and their particular thing, from looking at where they want to put their property, the new building on their property, the buffers don't even apply to them. It's in the midst of the property. It has nothing to do with them. So that's why this is just confusing. I believe we do need buffers. I agree you need buffers when these are in areas abutting single-family homes. But they don't need that for their application to get going. They don't need this as part of them. Right. And relating to the unit distribution provision, I meant to ask, when did Stonebridge first come into our town? What was the year?
2007, 2006?
Really?
Or was it 2005?
Yeah, I didn't hear.
Whoa,
Oh, 2002, you're right, that's the second phase, yeah.
okay, all right, so,
So for the record, the answer was 2002.
Sorry.
all right, it was 2002, and someone said these regulations were, you were here when the regulations were 1990?
No, because I got on my daughter's was after 96.
Well, I was just wondering if these regulations were written specifically at the time for Stone Ridge coming into town.
Yes,
And I suspect they were.
they were.
I suspect they were, so we got a little diversion here as to what the timing is. But I thought they would made specifically for them. So regarding their options, A, it only seemed to be asking for 30 units, if you looked at that option A about unit distribution. Or, but when you look at B, now we are up to 440 total. That's, and I don't even know, how many units does Stone Ridge have now? How many? Nobody can answer that question? Anyway, I think you have an awful lot to think about. This is very confusing, at least for this resident. Good luck. And I think you should take some time and let them make some decisions of what they want. Not trying to mesh the new regs, quote, new regs, into what they want to get going if they want to get going. And then deal with it later, not now. I think it's the wrong time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Applicant, wish any rebuttal?
No specific, I think we addressed all those in our initial application, initial presentation. I would just ask the commission how you want to proceed. If we're going to continue, I suppose we could file an amendment, that sort of narrows it down a little bit. Perhaps
So
take.
why did is the only reason you changed the buffer was because you were trying to kind of compromise with what we,
It was partially that, but without, things are gonna have to move on the site a little bit. So we wanna just be clear that we can still comply with the buffer requirements if things have to move towards the edge. Without otherwise, we're not gonna violate any of the rules, but I don't know how else to say it.
so you could be changing the buffers, the look of,
The look of the buffers, what constitutes
what
the
we
buffer.
have now. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. How many units do you have now?
I'm not quite sure.
I'd be guessing, I'd hate to guess and tell you the wrong answer. Look it up and find out. Can't be more than what's in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So right now it's good.
It test it out.
It came from
Was it a build out?
Their number of units and what they're approved, their number of units is gonna be less than what they're already approved for, because they're already approved for another wing of the building. So whatever that number of units is less than what they've already been approved for.
Currently, there's 269 independent units, 6 assisted living units, and 52 skilled nursing or memory care units.
And how many parking spaces are there?
Um, 428 parking spaces.
Oh, because of staff.
Yeah, and this will all be detailed in the actual special permit.
No, we understand.
Yeah, I just wondered, thanks.
It is good to know.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Next steps, I think the commission said that they want to think about this and, discuss options at the next meeting.
would it be amenable to continue the public hearing? Would you be amenable to that?
Yeah, I think John's question is, do you want them to revise their red line proposal to single out certain options?
That's why we put it.
Or do you want to leave it?
Generally, I would,
So, I mean, I think you've heard our discussions and you know where we're going. I'd like to see a cleaned copy, so we could work from something that's not all this. And then.
Well, that's mine.
Well, you know what,
Yeah,
sorry.
I actually kind of like having the three. I think you've already given us what your preferred
yeah.
options are. And then we have Clifton's, which is a red line copy.
The red line copy.
To me, I think that's enough to kind of weigh and decide.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I could go through them again, just if anyone.
I think we got it.
No, we got it.
I
I marked it
got
down.
I got it.
I think we understand.
I'd
It's
just like
laid
to
out,
see a clean-
I think it was
a
laid out
clean-
very clearly.
Yeah.
Take the
It said-
clean version from their application, not my red line version.
Yeah, you
Okay,
said
okay,
for
all right,
maximum
okay.
height, you wanted option A,
Right.
correct?
All
For
right.
the floor area ratio, you wanted option B.
No, I mean, I understand what they want, it's just.
For the buffer requirements, you had a standard, that's one proposed language
Yeah.
there. And then for the unit distribution provision, that's option B.
Yes.
Okay.
I understand what they want.
And then, yeah,
And then, obviously Clifton's,
Clifton's would be
And then
the
Clifton's.
Option
special
C.
sauce.
how we want, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we need a motion to continue.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue this public hearing to the next scheduled meeting, which is May 6th.
Motion to continue to May 6th, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one additional comment?
You can make the comment now, certainly.
Right. When Clifton said when they come back and you have the option to change things when they come for the special use permit, I want you to think about what you're doing to the applicant. Because it's kind of late at that point. They've got all their technical stuff done. And then you're gonna say, oh, now I want this and now I want that. That's too late. They need to have things on their site plan that you agree to or you don't agree to, not change on them when they have to go through all this team again. It's a big expense.
The
So
commission
noted.
regularly does request changes like that. If it's something significant engineering, like a berm, for example, obviously that's gonna be a significant cost. But generally, when we discuss landscaping buffers, the commission will say, oh, we want this at the first public hearing.
Correct.
The applicant will usually come back at the second public hearing with either a revised plan, or if not, will say, as a stipulation of approval, we will revise the plan to meet whatever the commission wants. So, I don't think they would be, the commission would be requesting them to move around structures, which would be a significant cost, but when we get to the smaller items like landscaping and buffers, the commission already has the flexibility to make that requirement on an applicant, so this wouldn't be anything of a change to that process.
So there's a motion to continue. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Seconded by Gary. Thank you, Gary. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Meeting's continued. Public hearing is continued. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think that concludes the business on our agenda for this evening.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn, no second required. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for agreeing to stay after 10. Appreciate it.